We'll get started momentarily. Thanks for reading. You were such a you're such a good reader. Thank you. Good morning. Yours didn't.
Take notes on what I said. Rather than just winging it.
Good morning, everybody. I will just give the last few people a chance to come in.
Jay, you might have to raise that a little bit
Yeah.
for you.
Come in, please. Come in, take a seat, and we will begin in a moment. There are refreshments at the back. Well, hello and welcome to the IETF. My name is Jay Daly. I'm the IETF Executive Director, and thank you for coming to this new participant program, We think it's very valuable to help people understand the IETF, which is a large, complex organisation that's built up over many years. And so this is a crucial way for you to be able to understand and navigate the IETF and the rest of this week. So this is the programme agenda we have for today. We have 6 main sessions. This is session number 1. We'll be breaking for lunch after session 4 and then coming back for session 5 and session 6. If you can make the whole day, that's great. If you can't, for many people, they need to come back and do some at one meeting and then do some sessions at another meeting to ensure that they get a chance to cover everything. Okay, we understand this is very complicated. Sessions 2 and 3 will have a lot of information in them. So this is me. I'm the IETF Executive Director. I've been in the role since October 2019. I came previously from the domain name industry where I'd been working for many years. And I'm one of the many people here who's a strong advocate for a free and open internet. And that's how many people, I think, participate within the IETF. So the IETF is as I said, it's a complex organisation. It is broad in scope, it is large in activity, and it has detailed practices and rules to manage that scope. And this can be a high barrier for entry for new participants. So we run this programme to teach you the important things initially about the IETF that you need to become productive and effective IETF participants. Many people come here with a goal and want to achieve something, and we are hopefully going to help you understand how to achieve that goal. And we do see people give up because of the complexity of the IETF, and so this is something we hope to demystify with this. We also want to build a cohort of new participants. So we have the new participant dinner, which is just for you, where you can get to meet each other and therefore establish relationships early in your journey through the IETF, so that as you progress through the IETF or continue with the IETF, there are other people you are familiar with right from the outset. And we also want to provide you a head start in meeting people, including leadership and long-term participants, and finding out what are the hot topics. Navigating the IETF can be complicated. So after today's session, we have later on in the evening, we have the quick connections, which is where you get to meet leadership and where we make the leadership rotate round and speak to all of you so you can get a good chance to talk to people then. So just before we start, I'm just going to make sure that you are comfortable with Meetico, which is our participation tool, because this is required and needs to be used for every session by every participant. So it's it's a sort of custom tool for us. The people that provide Meetico are long-time IETF participants who have developed many of the underlying, or been part of the development of many of the underlying protocols used in it, like WebRTC. All sessions are linked off of the data tracker agenda page, and there is a QR code on screen here. There's one outside when you come in, and there's one on all of the microphones here, which you can scan. And that's important for you to establish your participation in a particular session. It also will be necessary, as you'll see in a moment, for you to be able to raise your hand and speak at the microphone as well. We aim very strongly to integrate the on-site experience with the remote experience. And so we run a single integrated queue using Meetico for people to then come up and speak. So here are the useful buttons in Meetico. We have the mute and unmute your microphone, very used to turning on and off your video. Then the one with the hand is to join and exit the queue, and then the one for leaving the meeting is on the right. The next set, we can see the chat, pretty straightforward. Then we have the polling tool, or the show of hands tool. Sometimes people will take an informal poll of the session with a simple question to see where people lie within the room, and so that's the way you'll then be able to access that and respond. It's not voting because it's not the majority wins or anything. It's a way that people get to judge the room. We have the map of the event. We have the room name. We have the note taking. You will see in every session that somebody will be asked to take notes of the session, and that's the way they access it. We have a transcript. For some of the sessions, we have human transcription. For most of them, we have AI-based transcription. And then you can get to see the list of participants as well. So, about the IETF. The IETF is a standards development organisation, and it's focused on internet technologies. And it has some unique characteristics. So unique that many of us believe that we would not be able to rebuild a new IETF now, today. So, no formal membership. Anyone can participate. You just sign up for a mailing list and go and work with the IETF. People participate as individuals, not representatives of their employer. Now, that one can seem slightly complicated at times. This will be explained a bit more later, but it means that nobody gets any special status as a representative of their employer, and that people are expected to give their personal opinions, and because they are here for the good of the internet. But that will be explained a bit more later. It is driven by market-based adoption. So a real standard is one that people use. We try not to build things that nobody will use. That's no reason for that. It is bottom-up and community controlled. The last session of today will go through and explain that more, but everything that you see here today and everything that you work with is controlled by the community and has been built and designed by the community. If you were to see an overall power structure of the IETF, the community is at the top within the IETF. Most decisions are made by rough consensus, not voting. There are some small votes within some small bodies that do that mainly as a way to establish consensus, really, not as an actual ordinary vote. And people will explain what the rough consensus means throughout today. There are no formal role for governments. There are government representatives here. People do come from governments and do participate, but again, they have no special standing. And you may have noticed there are no sales tables outside. There are no booths, no promotions, this is an engineers conference. Engineers are here. If we catch anybody who's not an engineer, we escort them from the premises immediately, okay? This is an engineering conference, right? With some policy people who are engineers as well, but yeah, that's where I go. So we have the most exciting and enthralling mission statement for you here. It is to make the internet work better by producing high quality, relevant technical documents that influence the way people design, use, and manage the internet. It's pretty straightforward. That's what this is about. But the important part here is influence the way that people design. The IETF is not the police, the internet police. It cannot insist that people use its standards. People voluntarily adopt IETF standards. And so they have to be high quality and relevant for people to adopt those and to use those. So a brief history of the IETF. The IETF was formed in 1986 by what was then the Internet Activities Board as an engineering activity. The first IETF meeting was attended by 21 US federal government funded researchers in 1986, and a number of them still participate. You'll still meet some of them today, later on today as well. The Internet Standards process was first formally documented in 1992, and it's been revised a number of times since. So it's always been a fairly well-managed formal activity. It initially met 4 times a year, now meets 3 times a year, and the meetings are open to the public. Anybody can come and participate in these meetings. We do need to charge a fee for the meetings because it costs us money to run them. As I explain later in the finances, we don't make a profit from that. It's simply to run and operate the meetings. Now, a big part of the IETF now is the RFC series. The RFC series was originally something separate. It began in 1969 when Steve Crocker of the University of somewhere published an RFC to organize the working notes of the new ARPANET research program. And by March, roughly March, April, sometime next year, we're expecting to reach RFC 10,000. So the publication has been prolific in that time. There are lots of old standards that originally defined in RFCs, including FTP. And so the RFC series itself became the first online publication series because it was available over FTP, the standard that it defined many years ago. And for 28 years, the RFC series was managed and edited by the internet pioneer John Postel. And so it has evolved significantly since then, but many of the decisions that were made by individuals when this was a very small organization still have some relevance today, and you'll see those as well. So I'm now going to show you a bit about IETF participants. Every year we run a survey, and we send the survey to every email address that is subscribed to one of our mailing lists. We generally send it in December, run it over January, and then do the results, analyze and publish the results sometime in March or April. This year we had 53,105 subscribed email addresses. And we know that of those email addresses, we have 7,000 active participants each year. And we measure that by the email addresses that we see send a message to one of our mailing lists, the email addresses of people who participate in these meetings, and the email addresses of people who submit documents to us as well. So from that deduplicated set, we end up with roughly 7,000 every year. So this gives us a good understanding of the overall size, perhaps, of the IETF. So the first question that we ask is for people to self-categorize themselves into one of these 6 categories. Whether they're a regular participant, whether they're regularly sending emails to mailing lists, occasional, so that they may occasionally send one, whether they're a reader, which means that they read mailing lists in depth generally, but very rarely, if ever, send an email, whether they monitor, so that whether they maybe receive a digest of mailing lists, or whether they are subscribed but they don't read the mailing list until somebody else tells them to, whether they're a previous participant. When I show you the age demographics, you'll understand that people retire from the IETF. It's been running for such a long time. Or whether they're a new participant. And new participants are people who feel that they can't yet answer one of the other questions. That's they're still a new participant. So you can see our breakdown there. Of those 53,000, we have approximately 12% who regard themselves as regular, and another 24% who regard themselves as occasional participants. So we're looking at just over a third of those people interact in some way. And if you add on the new, we're up to possibly 40% of people who interact within the IETF of those people. So we're the largest organization. The regional breakdown, this has been a relatively static breakdown for a number of years. We have approximately 40% from Europe and 40% from North America. These regions may seem slightly strange. These are IETF designed regions that predate me, and so they are slightly unusual, but they're useful to help us understand where people, so that we don't lose track of participation or under participation from certain regions. Asia, as you can see, is at 11%. Asia is growing in participation. And there are a number of areas that are also small, but still perhaps proportionally quite well represented, such as Oceania. You will have me, a New Zealander, presenting this first session, and then you'll then have an Australian presenting the next session, for example, right? Sorry? An Australian who lives in America. Well, anyway, thank you. So this is our breakdown by age and by gender. As you can see from, let's deal with the gender one first. As you can see from gender, we are a very male-dominated organisation, at 85%. We do have more women participating in the IETF year on year, but we're still a very male-dominated organisation. We have commissioned a report a number of years ago, about 3 years ago, into the experiences of women within the IETF to understand and analyse how women have come into the IETF, what obstacles they've faced, what problems they feel they face now, and other things, to ensure that we don't have a discriminatory experience for women within the IETF. And there are a number of outcomes of that are still being worked through for the rest of the organisation to, for the leadership to begin to build into the structures of the organisation. In terms of people's personal experiences, this is generally good for both men and women, but certain things were different, such as recognition. Women felt that they were less well recognised than men, for example, within the IETF. So those are the things that are still being worked on. When you look at the breakdown by age, sorry, one more thing on gender. We've struggled to find a good comparative measure to see, for at least to set an initial target. I mean, the ultimate target is 50-50, but to at least set an initial target, we've looked at the number of engineers within, or percentage of engineers by gender within certain organisations, and for some organisations we're roughly the same, for others we're less than those organisations. But so trying to set intermediate targets is proving tricky on where we'd like to get to there, but still working on that. So then on the breakdown by age, as you can see, this is a relatively top-heavy organisation for age. The median, if I remember rightly, is somewhere in the 50s range, definitely. So that is reflects in many ways the history of the IETF as an organisation that has built up over many years. It reflects the addiction of the IETF, that when people get involved in the IETF and enjoy the IETF, they tend to stay and want to stay. We have plenty of people who will, when they are looking to move to a new role, or when they are approached about a new role, will make participation in the IETF a condition of their new role, because they want to continue within the IETF. It's also that as I explained, this is a complex organisation. It takes some time to learn it, and once people have learnt it and become productive, then they tend to want to carry on being productive. So that's our age breakdown there as well. So this is a breakdown by employment at the top, and then employment sector. So most people that come, as you can see, are employed. So for this survey, we allow people to select more than one of the options. That's the straight percentage on the left, which does not add up to 100. Then we have the weighted one on the right, where we then create a weighted one just to give us some understanding of what it would look like at totaling 100%, but that weighting may not necessarily be correct. As well, it may not be correct as if used, for example, say as a indication amount of time somebody spends in any of these things. So most people are employees. Then we have a number of business owners and independent contractors here as well, and a small number of retired people and students and unemployed people. Then within the employment sector, most people are working within business of some form or another. We split out civil society and not-for-profits from that as well. And we have a very large set of people from academia. But if you look at then this with the one above, what you can see is that we must have many people who are employed within academia who are coming here rather than that many students who are coming here within academia. We have, as I said, we have a relatively, well, if you look, the government side is relatively large there, as a weighted set of, 6.5%. And then these figures, the overall margin of error is plus or minus 2.6%. We then have another 7% of people who don't want to tell us, which is fine. So take it as you will, but this is a rough indication of the way the IETF is structured internally. Then we also ask people in what year did they first participate in the IETF. The counts in brackets are the actual number of people that responded. We do tend to get a weighting towards the end of this because the people who are newer are more happy to participate in the survey sometimes. But you can see we have 25 people who first participated in 1986 still involved, so we have a relatively long length of participation here. So that was a little bit about IETF participants. Bron's next presentation will be much more about people within the IETF. So the IETF has a very simple structure. The community is the top. This is the whole community. So I'm going to start in the middle with the yellow one. For those of you, otherwise this one here. So this is the IESG. This is the peak body for the IETF, for the IETF standards process. It's the Internet Engineering Steering Group. And that is managed by the IETF chair, and you will see the IETF chair present at plenary and other things. So everybody within the IESG is a community appointed person, and the IETF chair is appointed as the most senior community appointed person within the IETF. I'll show you some slides of people later and point these people out for you. Then to the left of the IESG, we have the nominating committee. So the nominating committee is instantiated every year newly. The members are selected by a random lot selection process from eligible members who put their names forward. Eligibility is based on the number of IETF meetings that you participate in within a particular time box. And they select most of the the community members in positions of authority within the IETF. Then we have the IAB, which is the Internet Architecture Board. I'll go through their role and explain a bit about them as well. So they're a separate committee. They're a committee of the IETF, a committee of the IESG, and they have a different role within the IETF that's meant to be not directly managing the standards process. Then on the far left, we have the Internet Research Steering Group and the IRTF chair. They manage the IRTF, the Internet Research Task Force, which I will talk about. Then over here, we have the IETF Trust, who they are the holding company for the intellectual property of the IETF, intended to provide us a safeguard from legal action around the use of intellectual property. And then to the right, we have then the IETF LLC, and then that's my role there. So I'm within the IETF LLC, the executive director. My board are all community members appointed within the community. And then to the far right, we have the Internet Society, which is the parent organization of the IETF LLC. The Internet Society is a society set up to protect and promote the internet across globally. And it also has a subsidiary public internet registry which runs .org, from which it receives significant funding. And we in turn receive significant funding from the Internet Society, which I'll explain later. And then just to note a couple of small parts on the bottom right here, we have the Secretariat. Also here, Michelle works for the Secretariat, who run these meetings and other things. We have the RFC Production Centre. We have a number of members from the RFC Production Centre here going through this. And we have a desk about those, and we have IANA. I will talk more about those later. So, the key leadership groups then. So, just to repeat then, the Internet Engineering Steering Group, the IESG, has overall responsibility for the standards process and technical management of the IETF. It consists of area directors and some advisory liaisons. The chair is Roman Delulu, and you will see him, as I said, at plenary, and if you come to the quick connections, then you'll get a chance to meet him as well. He'll do the opening speech and then be there to chat. The Internet Architecture Board, long-term technical direction for Internet architecture, and responsible for external liaisons and some key leadership appointments, chaired by the IAB chair, Tommy Pauly. And then the Internet Research Steering Group manages the IRTF, which focuses on long-term research issues related to the internet. I'll explain a little bit more about that later because they operate differently from the IETF. Then the IETF Administration LLC, the organiser part I work for, which provides the corporate and legal home for the IETF and organises its administrative support, including finances, contracted services, runs the meetings, does legal things, runs the technology and things like that. We have no influence over the technical content of internet standards. So I am one of the few people in this room who will not be in a technical session much this week, okay, because that's an important firewall there. Then we have the IETF Trust, as I mentioned, which owns and manages intellectual property, and the Internet Society, an international not-for-profit organisation. The one thing to note about the Internet Society is that the ISOC CEO chooses the chair of the NOMCOM, so that one role is chosen from outside of the community, but that's a non-voting role within the IETF. So we have all of these safeguards back on this slide here of who appoints who. This is an impossible to capture organisation because of this structure and because of all of these safeguards around things and because of this flow of appointments throughout the organisation. Okay, time check. So this is the IESG, the Internet Engineering Steering Group. Most of them are lovely. You can come along and speak to them, please do chat to them. This is Roman there. Roman's particularly lovely. Please do go up and chat to Roman. Some of them are stepping down, some of them are up for reappointment. But they are the busiest people during this week, but they will be, many or most of them will be at the Quick Connections tonight and then at the event later on in the week. They'll be there as well. This is, right, the IAB. This is the IAB. Most of them are lovely as well, so do reach out to them. They are nowhere near as busy and they will be very happy to talk to you throughout the time here. A number of them here have been members of the IESG previously, so they are very used to the whole way that leadership works and what's required. So the IAB I'm going to just explain a little bit because it's slightly unusual. The IAB has a long history. It predates the IETF. It is now a committee of the IETF, but previously it was in a different role. Its role has changed over the years. Now its role is architecture oversight. So it creates technical programs and it runs workshops and it evaluates BOFs, and BOFs will be explained more later on. It confirms appointments to the IESG. And so if it thinks the nominating committee has made a very serious mistake with an appointment, it can send one of those appointments back to the nominating committee. It appoints the IRTF chair, independent submissions editor. It appoints the ICANN board member that we have. It appoints a number of people in individual roles. It manages liaison coordination as it is the IAB that sets up formal liaison relationships with other standards development organizations, and it does informal outreach as well. And it has a degree of oversight of the standards process because it is then the next appeal body after the IESG if you have a complaint. So this is the recent work of the IAB. It has two programs. EDM, which is, I've forgotten what it's about, evolution, deployability, and long-term maintainability. The EDM is from there. And E-Impact is the environmental impacts and sustainability of internet technology. So these are long-going programs. It has workshops. So these workshops are generally 1, 2, 3 day workshops. They are not open workshops. People submit papers for them. Their papers are chosen, and then they set create an expert group, really, and then have a workshop of those. There has just been a joint workshop with the W3C on age-based restrictions on content access. And then before that, there was one on the next era of network management operations and one on AI control. And here are just some examples of RFCs from the IAB, including RFC 8890, which is important for many people. The internet is for end users, which basically says that if there's a choice where you're struggling, what is the purpose of this particular protocol? End users win always. So the IRTF, the Internet Research Task Force. This is a parallel organization to the IETF. It only has 16 research groups. As you can see, these are focused on broader things than the more narrow working groups that are developing particular technology within the IETF. It's headed by the IRTF chair, Dirk, another lovely person, go up and speak to him, who's appointed by the IAB. And then the IRSG is made up of the chairs of those 16 research groups I showed you previously. Now, there are some key differences within the IETF. First of all, the research groups are much broader, research-focused scope. So there are no deliverables and no milestones, which is very different. They're expected to be much longer lived. But this is because, of course, they are research. Nobody knows where they're going to end up, which is why they have no specific goals in that way. They can only publish informational and experimental RFCs, not standards. There is no requirement for them to come to consensus. They may publish multiple RFCs of competing ideas. And they have a supplementary code of conduct on top of the IETF code of conduct, which covers academic integrity, research ethics, and other things. And here are some examples of recent RFCs from the IRTF. Guidelines for human rights protocol and architecture considerations, application scenarios of the quantum internet. You know, these are very, very different things. Down to the bottom, the Ristretto 255 and DCAF 448 groups coming from the Crypto Research Forum. Right, so now on to the most important people, the admin people and the specialists who do things here. Yes, that's right, starting with me again. So no, here on the left we have the Secretariat, who you will see around. This is showing them in their Friday tie-dye costumes, but generally they'll be dressed as Michelle is now, so you'll spot them everywhere. Please speak to them as required. This is the IETF administration staff. So there's me as the Executive Director, Greg, who runs our Director of Comms and Operations, Debbie, who's our Director of Finance, who's still new, so who's attending the new participant program over there, and then Robert, who runs our developers, and then down the bottom you have our developers, okay? So we are, as you'd expect from a technical organisation, a relatively technical heavy organisation. The RFC Production Centre I mentioned previously, these are the team of staff who edit and publish RFCs. So when this, there's a full presentation on this and that's including in this information on how you edit and create an internet draft and things. But when an internet draft has been approved and ready for publication, it goes to this team who then edit it. So they check the language inside it, they check the XML inside it, they check any code inside it, they do those things, and they work with the editors to turn it into a consistent high quality product along with the rest of the RFC series. And then on the right we have IANA. IANA is a function of ICANN. These are ICANN staff, and they operate the registries for IETF protocols, so all of the code point registries and things. And both of these groups have a desk at reception where you can go up and ask any questions and talk to them as well. And then one key team that we'd like to highlight is IETF Sisters. This is a team that offers women and non-binary IETF participants an opportunity to meet and exchange knowledge and experience. This is one of the things that is in place to address our poor gender balance. And they have a breakfast and a lunch, I believe. I don't participate, so but Michelle can tell you more if you're interested in finding out more about that. Okay. So on to funding for the IETF LLC. We are a US 501c3 not-for-profit. That means that we are we have no, we do not distribute any profits to anybody. We don't make a profit, we don't distribute a profit to anybody. We are not a pay-to-play standards development organisation. This is very, very important. Many other standards development organisations, most of them generally, the more you can pay to have a seat on the board that sets the technical standards. You can pay for influence within them. You cannot do that in the IETF. You can give me as much money as you wish for sponsoring the meetings, but I have no control over the this technical standards process, so we separate things very strongly that way. We receive, this is our 2025 budget to give you an idea. We receive 7.3 million from the Internet Society, our parent organisation. We take approximately 2.4 million in registration fees, and we receive 1.7 million in corporate sponsorship. As well as the direct sponsorship, we get free equipment and services. So we're all accessing the internet now through Cisco access points and switches and Juniper routers, all of which have been donated to us, millions of dollars worth of equipment. So very helpful. And then we get direct donations as well that fluctuates between, say, 300,000 and $1 million per year. Policies. So this is the IETF note well. You will see this up in front of you at the beginning of every session. This is one of the only sessions where this is not the first slide, because I want to explain it. So this is reminding you that by participating in the IETF, you follow IETF processes and policies. And that's a condition of participation. The top one is behaving in a professional manner and extending respect and courtesy to the colleagues at all times. And if we have concerns about behaviour, we have an ombuds team who can manage that. I'll explain more about them. Then we have a requirement that if you see any work going on that is covered by a patent, that is, you are the author of or some way control, then you must disclose that. And that's important because we do, there is a preference for developing technology that is not encumbered by patents, and people need to know that in order to make informed choices about it. Then we have a reminder about the processes that are followed, which include dispute processes, appeal processes, and other things that are important for you to understand. And then just reminding people that we routinely make public written audio, video, photographic records of the IETF. We are a highly transparent organisation. This catches some people out. All of the emails to our mailing lists are on a public archive, for example. So, contributions to the IETF. Almost everything that you provide to the IETF, every email that you write, every document that you submit, every statement that you make at a microphone is classed as a contribution, and you are giving us a basic grant of rights for that contribution. And that grants the IETF, through the IETF Trust, a perpetual, irrevocable, non-exclusive, royalty-free, a license to copy, publish, display, distribute in whole or part, and to make derivative works from it in most cases as well. So you're not losing your copyright. You keep copyright of anything that you provide. You keep patents as well. You don't assign us any patent rights, but you assign us a right to be able to use that, within our organisation. It's vital for us to be able to do that. I have somebody in the queue. Would anyone like to ask a question?
Is Vanessa in the room or online? We see her in the queue.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, no worries. Okay. Thank you. So the privacy statement, as I mentioned, we operate in an exceptionally transparent way, surprises people. We publish these things: names, organisations, and country code of all meeting participants, audio, video, and transcripts of meetings, messages to most mailing lists, and all official communications received, subpoenas, letters, intellectual property things. And regularly people say, no, I want you, please remove that email. And we say no. One of the reasons that we are able to operate as a global standards organisation is because we are open and transparent, because we can show openly and transparently all of the input that were led to the development of our standards. And if we begin to hide that, that causes us global legal problems, so we don't do that. And yes, we are GDPR compliant for those people who think we're not. I just mentioned this. GDPR is remarkably complicated. We have lots of very good GDPR lawyers. We are very happy with that, right? But just to be clear, we don't sell your data, and we do keep certain things confidential that we need to, generally personal information related to roles or payment information and other things. Right, so I'm going to finish off with patents and similar IPR. This may seem a little bit dull first session talking about patents, but we like to get this just out at the beginning so that nobody is surprised by this. So you're required to disclose a patent that you know about, where either it's owned directly by you or your employer or sponsor for this meeting, whether you have the license, a right to license it or assert control over it, for which you might get any financial benefit, or which you're listed as an individual contributor. We don't check IPR disclosures. We run an IT system, which I'll show you in a minute, where people are just asked to go in and say, I have this patent, or there is this patent that I know about that covers, or could cover this area of work. And it is up to everybody else to go and work out whether they think that is there or not. It's a transparency mechanism, nothing else. So on the left here, it may be a bit small for you to see, we have a number of recent IPR disclosures, or from earlier in the year. So Huawei Technology has made a statement about IPR related to draft Lee MPLS enhanced VPN VDTN ID. Then Orange has made a statement related to draft IETF Ops Area Working Group prefix lengths, and so forth. These are where generally corporations or occasionally individuals make statements about their IPR. There's one further down, Antoine Delignac-Leveau has made a statement about IPR related to a specific thing. So an individual has given one there as well. And you can search IPR. So if you are interested in potentially implementing an RFC, or you are working on a particular technology and you are concerned that it may be patent encumbered, you can do a search, and hopefully the people will have done the disclosures and you'll be able to see that. It's an important transparency mechanism. So this is what an IPR disclosure looks like. We have at the top who holds the IPR, in this case Huawei, then who has submitted it, who the contact is, then what the IETF document is. Sometimes people do not give us a document and say, this is just a general disclosure I need you to know about. Those ones are more complex, the process, but relatively few in number. Then what the patent is, or the applied for patents for other things. In this case here, we have a Chinese patent number, title, packet processing method and network device. Then down the bottom, the licensing terms for this IPR, where somebody can specify no license required, royalty-free, reasonable and non-discriminatory, this list on the right here, in here they have selected reasonable and non-discriminatory license to all implementers with possible royalty stroke fee associated with it. Okay, so slightly difficult, slightly advanced topic to get into now, but just an important one for you to understand very early on. So that's it for my presentation. Do we have any questions at all from any part of that? Come up to the microphone. Yeah, introduce yourself at the microphone.
And if you haven't done already, this is a great opportunity to scan that QR code. If you go to the mic too, can you please state your name clearly? Thank you.
Hi, it's Mohibul Mahmood. And my question is, like, you mentioned that you got some, I think, donation of routers and others. So, like, I'm just would like to know, like, do you maintain a lab or anything? Like, you mentioned something like Juniper.
No, we don't maintain a lab. So
okay.
We have a network operations center here in this meeting that is staffed by a combination of contractors and volunteers, and they operate the network, and they have a full set of services that they run for that. I'm welcome to introduce you to the NOC, take you along to meet them if you're interested to see how that's going on. Just let me know.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions at all? Great. Okay, thank you. Over to the next session.
So we have a quick short break for 5 minutes. Feel free to refresh your coffee, use the restrooms located out the room down towards the left. If you do have a question, but you didn't get a chance to ask it in the microphone, you can always ask it in the Meet Echo chat room, or you can email the new participant list, or you can come directly to us and we'll be happy to help you. So we'll be back in just about 5 minutes. Thank you. Okay. I was trying to give you water.
No, that's fine. I'm terrified by the number of 500-year-olds in the back.
This This one's coming to say hi to me.
Well, I'm gonna say hi to him too.
Would you really say hi to me?
Always.
You're here to hug me from my Blue Jays lost
Yes.
last night.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. Last month.
I texted Andy last night and he never even responded to me. I'm afraid. Good to see you.
So, Ted, so we have a talk session later today. I have all the links. Randy, I guess.
Are you using
Yes.
chair for that session?
I think it's just, I'm not sure how they've done it in the past. Nice to meet you. How are you?
Daniel, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, I will let you.
Yeah. We're talking about the caucus meeting later.
Yeah.
I'll see you. I'm not sure if it matters or what. I'm not actually sure if it's like a unique identifier or something like that.
That's good, that's good. Hold on.
Good to see you this morning, man. Good to see you.
We should let you do this.
Well, you know, it's okay. Well, I'm here to do.
You need to be here or it's you need on the side,
And I
right?
do like
Or at least have some sort of privilege.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I lived in North
well,
America
you
now,
do,
so
yeah, right? But it is.
but the accent hasn't entirely dropped off.
Just letting you know that transcription's still running.
It's a nice. It's a nice.
Okay.
It's a nice little show.
Yeah.
That's what
Very sensitive. I did not realize that it would pick that up.
I think so.
Yeah.
This is how you actually get it.
Yeah. There's a little bit of just feel comfortable. How it's hitting. Thank you.
All right, cool. Well, I'm gonna get back there. You know, people are having a lot.
Yeah.
Oh, I could have been, yeah.
We'll be getting started with the next session in about 2 minutes.
Oh, man. Does this thing go up to human height? That's tied down. There we go. Yo. Yeah, thank you. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
All right, sit up and shut down.
He's so much more polite than I am. We're ready to get started with session 2.
Once everyone's got their coffee, it's very important. All right, welcome back, everybody. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how you participate in the IETF. Jay's shown all the statistics about who comes here and why. You're all here. Thanks for coming along. Thanks for being part of the IETF. I'll show you a little bit about how we work and how to use all the tools. And then, as you can see, there's plenty more happening through the rest of the day. Do feel free to pop in the queue at any time with questions. These sessions work a lot better when it's not just me reading off the slides and when I answer things that you really care about. So please do pop up at any point. I don't know if I can see on this screen, but that's all right. Michelle will let me know if anyone's popped in the queue. All right. So about me, as you can see, this is a picture of me back before I got all the life drained out of me by being in the IETF. I'm very involved in email-related things. So I'll be talking a fair bit about email. I'll also be down in the hackathon room working on some new email stuff. Did I say GMAP proxy? Goodness. You can find me on email. You can find me on, you can see how old this slide is. It still says Twitter. But you can see me, you can find me in many places if you have any questions. Also, I'm very tall. I'm easy to find if you want to pop around and ask me questions at any point throughout this whole meeting. All right. You will see this slide a lot. Is this the new one?
Yes.
There we go. This is the new version of the note. Well, so even if you've been coming to the IETF for a long time, which is not you people here, this is new to you. This slide tells you some of the stuff Jay already told you already, but the important thing is that when the AI looks at the video of you speaking in these meetings and recreates you, all this is online, so the AI is going to do a really good job of impersonating you. Good to know. No, but importantly, your contributions here are part of the process that creates IETF documents. That's a really good thing and does mean that you're handing over some of the rights so that we can create these documents. I'm not going to talk entirely about that because that's someone else's job, but the documents we create here do spell out how the internet works, and that's something that's really important to all of us. So your contributions here really matter long term. All right, email. We all love email. IETFers love email. By this data here, how do people prefer to work? The IETF mailing lists win overall, even more than being here on site, and being on site is pretty valuable. So every decision gets confirmed on the mailing list. All the final work happens on the mailing list, and it's all public. You can go back and you can see every single decision that's been made in the IETF by reading the mailing lists. All messages are contributions, and so they're covered by the rules that you already agreed to when you signed into Data Tracker, which you all did, to confirm that you were present here in this meeting. All right, there are a lot of mailing lists. It is very hard to keep track of everything. I'm on 40-ish IETF mailing lists, so maybe 10% of the total amount of stuff that happens in the IETF comes into my mail system. I have rules to put in folders, otherwise the volume would overwhelm me even just with that. There's a lot of mailing lists. It's all in Mailman, so standard mailing list manager. You can get in there, you can manage the list you're on. I believe once you've signed up to one of the lists, you can send to any of them, because the sign up for the first one means that you have agreed to the note well, and you can subscribe to mailing lists, you can view them online, you can go on and read through the archives of any of them, and you can even connect an IMAP client and fetch all the messages without having to get them sent to you. It is a website. You can go in, you can search. It's a fairly standard mail archive. The thing I'm going to say about all of this, right, these are web tools that you can log into. Mostly they're pretty safe to poke around in. So if you don't have permission to do things, it'll just reject it. So feel free to play. Hop in there, log in, play around, poke around, look for things, try things out. It's fine. Don't be worried about checking through and trying to find stuff. There's a whole heap you can say about being effective on mailing lists. I'm not here to teach you how to be a human being. But the important thing about mailing lists, all right, the important thing about email in general is that everyone comes across as more of a jerk on mailing lists than they really are. That's why we're here in person. We're here to build the relationships that allow you to communicate effectively on mailing lists, because someone you've never met before saying something will come across a lot worse than maybe they intended to. You will come across a lot worse than maybe you intend to. So take a bit of time to write clear, short emails, structure them readably. You're one person sending to maybe hundreds, maybe thousands of people to posterity. It's all there in the mailing lists. There's an email I wrote 15 years or so ago with someone who I unfortunately never met, who was being a jerk. And guess what? I was being a jerk back. I'm pretty embarrassed by how I came across in those emails. It's there forever. So think about that too when you're writing it. Write useful subject lines, because people are being flooded with emails. If you want your thing read, you've got to make it easy for the reader. And all the standard stuff about replying through quoted text. Nobody cares about that anymore. People top post, people bottom post. Make your stuff easy to read, accept whatever crap people send you, because they will. The usual. All right. Data Tracker. So Data Tracker you've all logged into already. It is where all the documents are stored. It's where all the history of the drafts that become the eventual RFCs sits. It's where the meeting agenda is, which will tell you which room to go to come to all my sessions, and maybe some other things as well. All right, datatracker.ietf.org. There's tons of information in there. And as I said before, poke around, look at it, find where things are. It's both reasonably easy to use and, like any complex system with lots of stuff in it, incredibly difficult to use. But the more you know your way around, the easier it will be to find things. It starts like this. It has a document search, which may or may not be useful depending the status of the document. But once you do that basic search, that additional search criteria will become available, or you can click the little button and you can search through a lot more. I'm going through this fairly quickly because, just point you at the things, you'll find your way around there. Please do pop in with questions, yeah? I know it's all incredibly clear and easy, but I like talking to people. All right, it's an identity provider. So once you log into Data Tracker, you can get into all these other things. The note, hopefully some of you will take notes in meetings. It's a great way to understand the content more, to pay attention more, to not be stuck in your phone, in your emails, distracted by other stuff that's happening in the world. So if you take notes in a meeting, it's a good way to pay attention to what's happening in the meeting. I highly recommend it. It helps you log into the mail archive so that if you have any permissions on any groups beyond just reading, you'll have access to those. And so you can sign into more mailing lists easily. It lets you into all the wikis. It lets you into Zulip. Zulip's a chat system that when you see the list of chat, that's not on this screen, but if you're logged in the full tool, you'll be able to have the chat down one of the sides. Even in the phone, you can see the chat details. That's all Zulip. So you can also log in with the full Zulip client. You can see all the rooms. We're using it for our hackathon thing that I'm involved in. So we're taking notes in there. I don't know about Yang catalog. I'm not a Yanger, but if you're involved in Yang, that's there. Oh no, Mailman is a separate account. There we go. That's probably worth noting. Things do move, things do change. We're a huge organization, and so you will see things change over time. I've certainly seen things change in the 10-ish years I've been involved in IETF now, which makes me a short timer. As Jay said, most people are here forever. Once you come to a few IETFs, you love it, you want to keep coming back, you make sure you work somewhere you can, all that good stuff. All right, meetings. We're at an IETF meeting now. Welcome. These happen 3 times a year. They happen in different venues, cities that are big enough. There's a whole interesting discussion if you go into the mailing list to look at the meeting venue discussion that's been going on. You'll see next year has some excitingly controversial countries like Canada, like China or the United States, which are both highly controversial locations to meet, and also Austria, which for some reason isn't, despite them having a history as well. All right. There's a lot of sessions happen at these things. In parallel, there are 9 or so sessions happening at the same time. It is very likely throughout the IETF there'll be at least one time where you wish you could be in 2 locations at once. Secret tip, you can. Go to your room, log into both of them through the MeetEcho client and just mute one tab after the other. Shh. Nobody told you this. You can even stick headphones in, sit in one room and watch another. It's ridiculous. Just don't turn on the sound on your tool in the room you're in, because there'll be feedback and everyone will hate you. All right. There's a ton happening in the agenda. Do have a look at it, see what's happening, and feel free to be a tourist, to go into sessions for groups that you don't know anything about and learn about them. If you don't have anything you want to be in a particular session, you can even sit out the back of one, play games on your phone, whatever you like, and see if there's something you're interested in. All right. Rooms are pretty much like this. There's microphones, there's a camera pointing at you, there's a camera pointing at whoever's sitting here, there's a big screen with slides, there's another big screen. If someone connects remotely, and I don't think we've set anything like that up to have someone connect remotely to these sessions, or is there something for the hackathon?
We are going live to the hackathon
there you
later.
Go. So you will get to see that as well. You'll get to see someone in a different area appear on one of the screens. In a regular meeting, if someone remotely joins the queue, they'll pop up on the screen. You can see them talking as well. Makes them feel a bit more human, and maybe you'll believe them a bit more, because that matters. Human interaction is how we build trust, and trust is how we build agreement, and agreement is how we get stuff done at the IETF. So what you're doing here more than anything else during this week is getting to know people, getting to build that human mutual trust with them. So when you're trying to present your ideas or when you're trying to understand their ideas, you're more likely to cooperate. And that's what it's all about. Other than that, yeah, there's seats, there's power, all that stuff. Hats are optional. See, I brought a prop. This is real kangaroo. It's from Australia. This is just so that I don't forget that I'm from Australia now that I live in the US. But seriously, when you're here, you might be representing a company, you might not, but while you're speaking, you're bringing your ideas. And so you can say, if you have specific interests, admit them, say, I'm from this company, this is what we want. But you're speaking for yourself. Everyone's voice is equal. There's no special, I know more about this, so I have more rights. There's a whole heap of stuff about rough consensus. I'm not going to go through all the details on it, but basically decisions are made once everyone's technical input has been heard, has been answered. It doesn't mean you'll get your way, but it does mean you'll be listened to. So if you have something important to say, do stand up, do speak up for it. Even on the mailing list, even if people are being jerks, try not to be a jerk yourself, but try and make sure your point does get heard. It is fine to, even if you don't know a topic that well, to go learn about it, to be involved in it. There's no restriction of who can be involved in different areas. It's not, oh, you're a security person, so you can't speak about applications, or you're an applications person, you have no right to be here. There's no such thing as you have no right to be here in any of our sessions. But do prepare, do read the materials. The number of meetings you'll go to and someone will say, who's read the draft? And you ask for a show of hands in the room or any indication. And yeah, I haven't read the draft, but I have opinions based on the title of your talk. Make the effort to understand what people have said. If you want people to help with your documents, a good way to build social capital is to read and review theirs and give good feedback. So do that. If people ask for reviewers, that's again a great way as a newcomer to get to know an area better, is to help review documents, to help give feedback on things. And certainly working group chairs, the thing we love most of all is for more than one person in the room to have read the document, because it's a lot easier to assess consensus if there's some understanding. All right. These things, you'll have one. They have information on them. I have a blue dot that says I'm a working group chair. You can see all these other different colored dots mean different things. So yeah, you can see that from what's on people. The red lanyard is important. If someone's wearing a red lanyard, it means they don't want their photographs published. I guess when you're standing up speaking, you're stuck with that, but they don't want to be in a ton of photos. So don't take photos of people with red lanyards, certainly not without asking them. All right. And you can have as many of these things as you like. You can make your badge as long as you like. There's tons of little stickers at the registration area. Go grab some, make it look pretty. There is a professional photographer wandering around. They're not in this room right now, but you will see, I think.
We usually have one meeting per year.
Oh, okay.
I don't think we have one.
We don't have one. There you go. There's no professional photographer. Take your own photos. All right.
We have a professional photographer usually at one meeting per year, but it's not happening at this meeting.
All right. Michelle's going to take photos of you. All right. The agenda tool. Who's looked at the agenda tool? Quick show of hands. Fantastic. We got a good batch this year. Well done, yeah. There's lots of, this is an old agenda. This is from like 2 meetings ago. You can't find good help these days. It's ridiculous. It has, hopefully the things are in the meeting time zone, which is here, but you can switch around the time zone if you are attending a meeting remotely, a different time. Are there people watching this remotely?
Yes.
Awesome. If you're watching this remotely, you can switch this to either the time zone of here or see in your own time zone when things will be. There's those little icons on the right-hand side there, linked to different things about the specific agenda for that session. So for any session, you can go in and you can see the linked drafts. You can see the agenda that's been written out by the chairs, which may or may not be accurate to what's actually going to happen, but hopefully somewhat close. And you can see any slides that have been proposed by people that are going to be used during the session, which is handy because you can get a little spoiler and look ahead to see what they're going to say and decide whether you want to go there or not. All right. Meeting network, this was spoken about a bit earlier by Jay. Thanks for the question. And these lovely people here, or people who are similar to them, are keeping the network working. There's 1,000 people, something like that, floating around here. And we need a network that we can all get to whatever we want to on there. I see someone in the queue. Pop up. Hi. Microphone.
Hi, my name is Roberta. I have two questions actually. One is, what is the Birds of a Feather meetings?
All right. I believe there's something more about Birds of a Feather later.
Okay.
Pretty much they're one of the ways that work starts coming here. So the IETF has working groups which work on specific topics, and they each have a charter that describes what that working group will work on, because the entirety of the RFC space and all the documents we have about how the internet works is quite large. And you don't want every working group working on everything. So working groups are chartered to work in a specific area. Generally, a BOF will be Birds of Feather people with related interests about a particular area to get together and define a charter to discover there's enough people interested in the work that it has a chance of progressing, and particularly that people with experience in that area, maybe from outside the IETF, are willing to come here. And so a BOF is a chance for the IETF to assess interest in a particular area and work on defining a charter. So there'll be a working group forming BOF, which is specifically designed to do that. The idea there is we have a charter in mind, and we're going to discuss and narrow down that charter to what people are willing to put the work into, decide on the deliverables for it. Sometimes a BOF is just to talk about an idea and see if there's enough interest to go down that path.
Cool.
Yep.
Cool.
Cool.
The second one is about, is there a way that we integrate the side meetings with the schedule? On the
I
React?
don't know so much about that. I'm going to defer.
So because side meetings are not official IETF meetings, they are not integrated into the actual agenda. But at the top of the agenda page, there is a link to the side meetings Trello board. So that's where you will find the schedule for side meetings happening during the week.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Roberta.
Hi, Mohibul Mahmood, and my question is on a data tracker. So I'd like to know, like, whether you have any tips or like any idea, like how to navigate well the RFCs and to check the history, or yeah, so things like that.
Yeah, so if you go to any particular RFC within the data tracker, it will show the document history, all the drafts that led up to that RFC being created. And there's a diff tool that allows you to compare versions, so you can compare side by side what text changed between individual drafts. And there's also the mailing list for the working group in which the draft was created. You can see the mailing list discussion that led up to it. You can also see within that working group, it will have a list of meetings that it's had, both sessions at IETF plenary meetings, and there's also interim meetings that some working groups have, and any minutes that were taken from them will also be available in the data tracker. I would recommend just poking around, clicking through things, find a document and search through it. I don't have the ability standing up here to walk through one on a document, but just log into the data tracker and play. It's designed to be used.
Okay, thank you.
Cool.
And just a added note that if you're having any problems navigating the data tracker or have any questions about your data tracker account, there is a tools team desk located in the same room where you checked in at registration. So if you're having any problems or have any questions, please feel free to stop, say hello to them, and let them know what information you need.
All right. I'll keep rolling through my slides. So Zulip is the chat tool. It's quite easy to search that name. There's nothing else called Zulip. So if you search for that, you'll find downloads for the full tool for your computer, or you can log into it online. When you connect to any session, as I said, you'll see the chat stream for that session, and that's also backed by Zulip. So it's the same tool. You can see the chat in there or through the interface. You log in with your data tracker credentials, and it's slightly different than other chat systems. It has, as it says, streams and topics. So there'll be one topic for each meeting. People can also create additional topics that you can chat in, and you can see a summary of what's been said in each one, so you know where things are happening that you can go into fairly easily. It's another chat system. There's plenty to keep track of, but it's particularly useful during the meetings for real-time coordination and communication. There's a wiki, so information about this particular meeting's there. The hackathon has its own page as well. I don't actually spend much time on the wiki, but there is plenty of information in there. So as with anything, poke around, edit if you see something's wrong, don't be a jerk. All the usual rules apply. This tool right here, Meet Echo, or have Jay pronounced it slightly differently. I don't know what the correct pronunciation is, but I say Meet and Echo, and so I pronounce it as two words. People seem to understand what I mean. Again, familiarize yourself with it, play with it, have a look around, feel free to pop in the queue and pop out during this session. And yeah, use it. It's very easy to find. There's a link to each session on the agenda page. The way I tend to navigate at the IETF is I go to the agenda page first. I see what's on during this time. I remember pretty quickly which one I intended to go to. I decide if that's what I still want to go to. Try and find the room in whatever rabbit warren we're in this time. Every single meeting venue has its own weirdnesses. So if there's something you really want to go to, I do recommend maybe figuring out how to get to that room in advance so you're not frantically scrambling when it starts. But otherwise, I'll look through that. I'll scan the QR code on my phone when I walk into the room, and then I'll use that to stick myself in the queue and heckle throughout the session. All right. And that's the end of my time. So questions, any more questions, please?
And if you are asking a question, please practice putting yourself in the queue and then come to the mic. This is a great opportunity to scan the QR code if you haven't yet. And it's a great opportunity just to test out Meet Echo if you haven't gotten the chance. You're in a safe space. You know, there's no mistakes with Meet Echo. So please, yeah, you got a question for Braun? Put yourself in the queue and hop up to the microphone. Those of you who are joining us remotely, you also please put yourself in the queue and we'll call out your name and you can ask questions.
All right,
Oh.
Sean.
You're not a new
He's
participant.
my backup presenter if something happens to
Hi,
me.
I'm Sean Turner. I'm not new. I guess interactive. This is the fun part. We get to ask you questions. What do you think was the thing that made you the most effective participant in the IETF that you've become now that you're here telling us about how this works?
Well, thanks for saying I'm effective. I appreciate it. I think really, and I did address this a little bit before, but it is really worth hammering this particular point home. It's about relationships. Success at the IETF is about building relationships with people. It's about building trust with people. This is the reason why we travel around the world to meet in person, is that it's much higher bandwidth communication and it's much clearer communication, and you build friendships, you build trust with other people. and some level of mutual obligation that will make you review their documents and make them review your documents, which is kind of important. So when I first joined IETF in 2017, I had an idea. I had a protocol for email talking between clients and servers that we'd spent years developing this thing called JMAP, and wanted to standardize it. And it came as a semi-formed idea, and it went through a lot of revision at the IETF. It became a lot better because you have access to a huge amount of expertise. There's 1,000 people here who are all old and crusty, not quite, but have all spent a fair bit of time working in standards, have seen things that do and don't work, and can give you really valuable advice and feedback. And they will. And some of it will be easy to receive and some of it will be not so easy to receive, but it will be useful feedback. And so coming in willing to accept that feedback, willing to work with people was really important, and willing to keep working. It takes a while. I don't know if there's slides later on about how long it takes an idea to go from initial draft to publication in the IETF. We'd love it to be a year. Often it's more like 4 years, something like that. It's a while. And so you do have to be here for the long haul. But the documents we publish are forever. The oldest RFC is more than 50 years old now. And so these documents, they're stable documents. They are the building blocks that everything else is built on top of. And so you are here for the long haul. Your documents are here for the long haul. And the work you do here is going to be the basis of a lot of future work. So you're building foundations for people.
Okay, we've got Jeffrey in the queue.
Hello, Jeff Brown, Apple. This is kind of a question / comment. This is actually my second IETF.
Hi, I'd like to ask a statement.
Yes.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. This is actually my second time through.
Welcome
I was here.
back.
I was here in Madrid as well, and I found the agenda very daunting the first time. And I was going through the agenda and like laboriously putting things from the agenda into my calendar sort of manually.
Mm-hmm.
Someone saw what I was doing. They're like, "Why are you doing that? There's these apps." And so there's IETFers and there's IETF Next, and I wasn't sure like if they're like official or people like what is the official stance on those apps, because I haven't seen anybody sort of talk about them in any of these new participant meetings.
I will defer again.
Actually, I don't have a good answer to that question, since I'm not going to the working group sessions myself. But that's probably a really great question for the tools team, Des, that we mentioned earlier. They might have more insight if there's one that's better to use, works better. So I would highly suggest you stopping by there and asking what they would suggest.
Okay. Because yeah, they definitely made my experience both last year and this year, or last meeting and this meeting, much easier to navigate. So
yeah,
just curious what was going on with those. Thank you.
Yeah.
So what I do is I have a Notion page that all the people in our company note down which sessions we're going to in which time. I think everyone uses their own tools for tracking their time. There's so much to go to, and I put priority order. I'd like to go to this and then this. If someone else is going to this one, I'll go to that one. So we've got coverage, that kind of thing. It's not something I would expect the tools to support.
Hi,
Hello again.
Hi, Sean Turner again. So the quickest way that I do that is if you go back to the agenda slide, can you go back to the other one? I don't know how far back it is. There's a button on the right where you can build your own. And so then you just go through and click, right there, it's the calendar view, you can build your own. And so you can go through and pick the ones you want, and then it like starts to shorten the agenda. Then you can download an ICS or a Google thing directly into whatever your calendar program is, and Bob's your uncle. Mm-hmm. So you're done. That's what I do. There are other apps that people use, and again, I think they just put them together because they wanted to, right? So I think you can use them if you want, but I think they're officially not supported.
All the data is in open formats that IETF defined. So yeah, you can mix and match how you like.
So we have one more in the queue, and I'm going to close the queue now because we do want to have time for a little bit of a break. So Sanjana?
It's okay. You don't need to run. Hi.
Hi, I'm Sanjana. I didn't have a question. It was more of a comment on what you said. There are two apps, IETFers and IETF Next. And if anyone's interested, they are available on iOS. And in my opinion, IETFers, which is supposedly the older version, actually works better when it comes to just you click a meeting and then it gets added to your calendar. That's all I was saying. Thank you so much. Sorry.
Thank you. All right. Thanks, everybody. Enjoy your break.
Yes, we have a little break right now until we start session 3. So we'll see you back here starting at 12:10. And it's a really important session because it's all about the standards process. That's why we're here at the IETF. So, I'm sorry? Did I say 12:10? It's been a long day. Yeah, they corrected me.
You're driving the slides, are you? I drive them. I drive from my laptop to your laptop. Just quicker. I said, do I need to do anything separately? I just stand and talk for a bit.
Let me just test this.
Don't expect me to take questions as it goes along.
I can, yeah, I can just, yeah, that's fine.
Is that okay for you then? Which is fine.
But you go through my witnesses, right? I don't see any type of on or off switch.
Other than I'm disconnecting, I can't see anything obvious. Is it causing a problem when we're speaking?
It's a surprise if not tell you. It's just like wait for 3 seconds. Yes. It actually notice it's not this one. My one is this stuff like dark there. That's the stars. I see what the screenshot. I was there just before.
Okay, everybody, if you want to find a seat, we're going to get started with session 3.
Right, I can encourage you all to take seats, please. So, you've had 2 sessions this morning. Please take seats. And this is the 3rd session. We, Benoit and I, are going to do a joint double act, and we're going to talk to you about the sort of standards development process. So this is quite heavy in terms of covering the content, and you don't need to learn it all now, but it's going to give you an overview of the different areas and process and what it's like, so that you start getting involved, you sort of can set the scenery and know where you're going. So you've had introduction to IETF participation. This is the 3rd presentation for newcomers, and we're covering processes and bring new work. Please do ask questions as we go, and if you do that, please do the sort of process. I think we taught how to sort of use the tool to log in and raise your questions there, and then line up at the mic queue as well. That'd be great. So first of all, to introduce myself, I'm Rob Wilton. I've been coming to the IETF for about 10 years here. And it was this guy here, Benoit, who first introduced me, encouraged me to come along to the IETF. I didn't know much about it, but I was quite lucky that we both worked at the same company, and hence when I came to the IETF, I had somebody to sort of point me in the right direction, and when I had questions, helped me in that sort of way. So that was really good. And over that time, I've been a participant, sort of contributing and writing drafts and things, working in the working groups, and then I got elevated into leadership for a few years. And then I stepped down a couple of years ago, and now I'm back into participants and back into doing regular work. I'd also like to let Benoit introduce himself.
So good morning and welcome. So I'm Benoit. I joined the IETF, it was 2001, so a long time ago. And the first time I joined, I was very scared because I had to present in front of people who've been creating, standardizing the internet. So I knew my presentation by heart. I tried to fake it. I was calm, but I was not. So the point is that I still have a passion after 20 more years. So that's what I want to share with you. And the goal of this session is to demystify this IETF and the process and all of these. So along the years, I've been having multiple roles in the IETF, like a draft author, then RFC authors, then workgroup chairs and area director, because I think it's a chance to join this community. Thank you.
So the Note Well, you'll get to see and love this a lot. So this is like any other meeting, the working group chairs and things are obliged to put up the Note Well for every meeting. And normally we'd give you time to read this. I think you've gone through this already, but just be aware this counts as an IETF meeting, and hence everything you do here counts as participation and contribution to the IETF. But I'll skip over it this time. Right, so onto the main sort of subjects we want to talk about. We want to talk about what working groups and areas exist in IETF, what sort of structures we are. So I'll give you an overview of those.
And it's worth sort of seeing that the IETF tries to sort of organize itself and split itself up into different areas for organization purposes. And there's 7 of them that you can see listed here. And each area has between 1 and 3 area directors. And that's the people who are responsible for area, normally experts. And their goal is to try and make sure that they can sort of help the work in that area to progress in a particular way and to make sure it's of good quality and cover those concerns. So their role there is really to help participants to get their work done. Quickly covering the different areas we have. So art applications are real time. So this covers stuff that's really sort of layer 7. Email fits into there, real-time communications, and lots of other sort of small little different bits. This has 2 area directors and 24 working groups, as you can see. The Gen area, the second one, is really unusual because it doesn't have many working groups. It doesn't have much work. It's to do with organizing the process of the IETF itself. So we have lots of documents that say what the IETF process is, and the areas, the working groups in the Gen area are those ones that sort of organize and create the IETF processes. How do you go through these steps, these sorts of slides and things, what these areas are. Would be sort of in that IETF process stuff. Those get created when required. There's normally only 1 AD for that, which is the IETF chair. And basically, as a newcomer, you're unlikely to get very involved in this working group or this area to start off with. But it's there and you're welcome to if you can. The int area is the main one to do with the internet, layer 3. So everything to do with IP, IPv6 fits in there. DNS also fits into that area. And it's sort of like a thin waist to the IETF and to the internet protocols. You've got things like DHCP, mobility fit into there as well. Ops and management area. This is widely regarded as being the best area to work in. Both of us are previously Ops ADs, area directors. And it covers 2 things in this area. So one, it covers network management. So anything to do with sort of configuring network devices and also getting data off them to manage them. And then a separate half of that area is to have like network operations. How do you manage the IETF protocols? How do you make sure that they work? How do you deploy them? And it's an unusual area in the sense that it's sort of is split into 2 area directors, which each have separate responsibility for half of it. Whereas normally for most areas, the area directors have joint responsibility over the different areas, but they'll have assigned working groups. Routing area is one of the ones where you probably most associate the IETF with, perhaps along with the internet area, and that's all the routing protocols to do with communicating and setting up the paths through the networks. And there's lots of those to do with protocols like BGP and OSPF and ISS, those ones you might come across, and a lot of work to do with like traffic engineering across there. So it's quite a large area. So it has 3 ADs, has quite a lot of work, and it's sort of partly where a lot of the traditional IETF work, you would sort of fall into that area. The last 2, security and WIT. So security area covers anything to do with security concerns. And that's to do with the cryptography protocols, but also how you use those and deploy them. So TLS would fall into this area. It's unusual in the sense that the area and the technology spans across all the protocols that IETF does. They all have considerations for security. So sometimes with these areas, it can be tricky to work out exactly what should go where. And it doesn't really matter too much. It's just that the area directors will try and find the best home, the best fit of where to put things. It's not like a hard and fast rule. And finally, WIT, Web and Internet Transport. This was split out of art. So occasionally IETF will try and reorganize the areas to try and align it with what the current work the IETF is doing. And that's covering anything to do with HTTP and also protocols over that related to that. So things like there's HTTP APIs in there. I think Quick falls into that area as well. So that's our areas. So we split up our work into these different areas to try and help people know which things they might focus on and potentially to deconflict scheduling between the working groups. Along with the areas, the IETF has loads and loads of working groups. I'm not going to go through the list of what each of these is doing. I don't even know what all of these are doing. It doesn't matter. But you can see that the working groups are split into each areas, and you can find out more details about them. The one thing I do want to point out is that these working groups come and go over time. They're not fixed. So if new work comes along, then they'll create a working group to do that work, and then when it's finished, it'll get closed down. it is worth pointing out a few of these ones, these working groups that are in bold, and those are ones that are like more generic cross area working groups that cover generic new work coming in and similar topics. So just to highlight those, like the dispatch working group is where new work comes into art often. Gen dispatch is where new ideas and things in terms of IETF process come into. The int area is a similar sort of one where you discuss more general issues related to the internet area that aren't related to a particular working group. We have ops AWG serves a similar purpose in the ops area. RTGWG and RTG area as well in RTG, and then sec dispatch and TSV WG are the two ones that sort of span those. So those are quite good working groups sometimes to go to because they have new work coming in, where you'll find that the other working groups often are discussing stuff in detail. Right, I think it's over to you, Benoit.
Thank you. So let's go back to this one. So the IETF love acronyms. So a working group is typically referred as an acronym, and you're going to see why. Now, how many of you, so you are all newcomers, but how many of you do have already a draft, an IETF draft? Okay, a few of you. Now, which working group do you want to look at? There is this saying that if you want to be involved in the IETF and know exactly what is the content of a working group and be up to date with all different documents, you might want to subscribe and pay attention to one working group at a time per meeting. It's a big mistake to say, you know, I care about security. I'm going to subscribe to all the mailing lists and try to be on top of that. And you'll be disappointed because you will arrive to meetings and people will discuss documents and all this, and you don't have the background. Now, for those of you who have already an IETF draft, do you know where you want to post your draft, to which working group it belongs? Or if you're thinking about writing an IETF draft, which working group should you target from this list? So, okay, we spoke about different area. That's a good start. But now you want to take some of the working groups in a specific area and see what they do. So let's take one of them. This one is called Authentication and Authorization for Constrained Environment, ACE, the famous acronym, right? I'll come back to that, which is also there in a data tracker. So you would see this one comes from the security area. You would see the chairs of this working group. If you got question, you would see the area director. You would see the mailing list, right? Now, it's very easy to subscribe to a mailing list. You just click there and that's it. And it's a good way to see what's happening in the working group. That's also a good way because you know the acronym to see what was the agenda at the previous IETF meeting in Madrid. What are they discussing? So if you're not sure, because if you enter the IETF, if you join the community, you might have questions. So there's the newcomers event this evening. You've got previous AD here. You've got the AMS team, the superstars, and they know everything about the IETF. That's right. I like to put her on the spot. So they are, and you can also ask the chairs and the AD. You could also see the history of what was discussed here in the charter, right? And now there are a couple of interesting tabs. We're going to see next slide, the document one, the meetings. Typically, if I know that I want to be involved in this working group, I would just click on the meetings and would have all information about the meetings, the agenda and all this. It's a yet another entry as opposed to coming from the full agenda that you just saw in the previous set of slides. Now, let's click on the Documents tab from this one. For the people who've been creating an IETF draft already, what is the difference between your draft and the draft that you see over there? And remember, I believe Rob was mentioning it's an interactive session, All right, so if you don't come up with questions, I'm the one asking the questions. So what's the difference between your draft and the draft that you see over there? One more time. Yes, the draft that you wrote down. You are a draft owner? Not yet. Okay. All right, you said something important. Individual draft versus working group documents. What is the distinction here? I click on the Documents tab, and I see there, I'm trying to turn and speak in the mic, so I do my best. So you see draft-IETF-working group acronym. So we mentioned a few times already the acronym. So first message, those, because it contains IETF, draft-IETF, it's a convention that these are documents that are accepted in the working group. So the people are going to work on this. The document belongs to the working group. If you are a newcomer, typically with the people who've been writing a draft, you are an author of an individual draft. So you want to present it to the working group, discussing on the mailing list, etc. And whenever there is enough interest, it could be adopted. And then you could be changing the name of this document to IETF. The second key message is that if you learn already that the working group in which you want to work, on which you have a draft, it's ACE, right? So what I want to do if I'm posting a new draft, I want to make sure that I put ACE in the draft name. So draft dash whatever I want, my name or something like that, dash ACE. It means that it's going to be listed. We don't see it here, right? But below the list, you would see the individual draft. Now, it means that the new people, the people who care about ACE would see, oh, there is this new draft that you know about. And maybe they're going to review it. And maybe they're going to comment it on the mailing list. And maybe you'll get support. So that's a quick way to target the working group. And what you see on the right-hand side, this is the status. So Rob will be mentioning the different status of the document. They start by being like, it exists, ID exists, internet draft. Up to, it's in the RFC letter Q, which means that we're doing the final check on the English, on the procedure, the content will not be changed, and we're going to publish it. Now, if you take a single draft, right? Okay, you know the working group, it's ACE. And you absolutely dream at night about additional format of authentication credentials for the datagram transport layer security profile for authentication authorization for constrained environments, right? So you want to know more about this draft. So you click there. So what do you see? You see first a timeline. The timeline you see, it was called draft Tiloka, whatever it means. But they were clever enough to say ACE in there. So it belonged, sorry, it doesn't belong to the working group, it's going to be listed in the working group. They posted multiple draft version until it was adopted as a working group document. So it moved from individual to working group document there. And that's a way to see the kind of status of the document. Now, if you want to know more about that, a typical thing you'd be doing is that going by the mailing list, and what I do is searching on the draft name in the subject, and I would see a kind of different discussion that happened on his draft. I could also go back in the video recording and see what was presented. So that's a way to get all the background information about your draft. So for the people who have a draft right now, one day you will arrive and they will be very happy to say it's a working group document. It means what? It means that now your document is not your document any longer. It means it belongs to the working group. So based on the consensus of the working group, if there is changes, even if you disagree, but the consensus is we go in that direction, this is fine. This is going to happen. So the working group is the owner of the document, which is the way it should be working if you want to have interoperability. Now, you have your working group, you have your draft, and then what do we do? Let's explain the basics on our process. Is this you, right?
One more slide off this for you first.
Wait, I'm going one more slide. All right, I want to explain something. I want to explain three things: humming, polling, and voting. Voting that we don't do. The unofficial mantra of the IETF is we reject kings, president, and voting. We believe in two rough consensus and running code. The rough consensus is a couple of checkpoints we have along the life of a draft to make sure that we have a consensus in the room. We're going to discuss this on this slide. And the running code is why we have the hackathon right now. So next year, I want to see you, next IETF, not in this room, but in the hackathon coding. So the two of them, rough consensus and running code, is our mantra. Now, for gauging the consensus, let's say that I'm the work group chair and I want to see what is the sense of the room for a decision. So let's play a game, right? So let's say we have a decision to be made. Do we want to come back to Montreal for the IETF? Right. So let's do a show of hands. Who wants to come back to Montreal? Good. Who doesn't want to come back to Montreal? A small hand there. Now, what does it mean? That as a chair, I know where the room wants to go, but I also saw who doesn't want to come here. And maybe this gentleman there, the entire room is going to say, we have a problem with this guy. And this is what we don't like. We don't want to see, oh, this guy voted that way, that person that way, etc. However, I said I want to evaluate to get a sense of the room. If a single guy has got a pretty valid argument, so typically what I would do is that I would say, is there a pretty valid reason why we should not come back here? And if this gentleman would go to the mic and say, you know what, there is reason A, B, C, and D. And the people will say, oh, actually, he's right. So it's not voting like 99 and 1% against, but the 1% against had a pretty valid reason. Now, it's not voting. So what do? We do hum. Hum means So I would not be doing a show of hands. I would be doing like, can you hum if you want to come back to Montreal? Can you hum if you don't want to come back to Montreal? A little bit. Great. What is the difference? The difference is that I don't put anybody on the spot. I'm going to ask the same question again. Is there a reason that we want to know why we don't come back to Montreal? So if the person comes and say, I don't like the poutine. Okay, thank you for your feedback. If the person is telling, we have issue with some people of the world because they can't join because of visa, whatever, you say, oh, that's an interesting statement, right? So do you see the difference between not voting or voting and humming? Now, let's admit that the world has changed, meaning that we work on the internet. We want to be inclusive of everybody joining even remotely. The COVID did its job, so we've got virtual meetings. So what happens if I do a hum on the mic? Let's hum if, so the guy with the loudest mic is going to win. So it doesn't make sense, right? So we have now the polling. The polling is a tool inside the meeting where we're going to see what is the sense of the room. 99% of the people want to come back to Montreal and 1% doesn't want. But we don't know who the person is. And we say, if that person wants to come on the microphone explain. So you see, we went from humming to polling because the world has changed, but it's the same principle, no voting. If you want to know more about this, read the RFC at the bottom on consensus and humming in the IETF.
And everything that Benoit has been talking about here and the whole of the IETF process is about how do you get consensus? How do you get agreement with people? And so you all agree on the best solution, which is hopefully the best technical solution, but that may also take into account how things are deployed, the realistic, network considerations and things when you're deploying these protocols. And that's what we're trying to do here. Now I'm going to cover this process flow summary. There's a lot of different stages here, so I'll go this at a fairly high level. You don't need to know this or learn all of this. If you participate in the IETF, you'll start to learn this as you go. And the key bits to understand are like the early phases, like the individual phase, and maybe a bit of the working group phase. But the stuff below that, the IESG phase, you don't need to worry about because other people will help you through that part of the process. In fact, most of it happens automatically. But this is just for you to understand and get sort of an overview of what it looks like. So 3 phases, an individual phase, Benoit was mentioning that, an individual draft. Then we have a working group phase when we work on the documents and we improve them. And at that point, it's owned by the working group. And then finally, we have an IESG stage where they check across, is this document finished and ready to be published? And that's what they're doing in that stage. So in the individual phase, as Benoit said, you come and bring your idea to IETF. You write a draft. And that's always the best way to bring an idea to the IETF. You might chat with people here, but if you have a document, there's something that people can read and review. So you write your individual draft. And as Benoit says, you make sure you have draft, whatever maybe draft your name, dash, and wherever you want to target to the working group. That helps people understand and see it. And then you should also send an email to the working group at the same time, say, look, I've got this idea, I've written this draft, please can you review it and give me some comments back on it and things. So you're trying to solicit input on your draft. And hopefully you'll get some comments back. You may also ask the working group chairs, if you come to IETF, it's like, can I present my draft? And they'll give you some time, hopefully. If the working group session is not too busy, they'll focus on the working group documents first, but they'll give you opportunity to present. And you'll get some comments back. So people will comment on your draft and give you feedback. And that stage, you will then normally update your draft. As an individual draft, you'll take the comments back and you'll work on it and refine it. And you'll go through that process maybe 2 times or 3 times in terms of IETF cycles. So you get to a point where you think, okay, I've addressed the key concerns and things, and now I want to see is my document in a state where the working group can work on this and adopt this document? And you'll ask the working group chairs, is like, please, I think this document's got to the stage where I'd like you to do an adoption poll. And the working group chairs will then do this call for adoption, and they'll ask basically the working group to review the draft over a 2-week period and comment on whether they think the working group should work on this particular topic or not, this particular draft. And the considerations there are, is it in scope for the working group? Is it an interesting problem to be solved? Does the working group agree this is something to be solved? And does the working group agree that this is like an outline of the solution? It doesn't have to be finalized, but it needs to be like, yes, this seems to be a good working base. And you'll get this poll over 2 weeks, and then you may get the working group chairs will decide is there consensus from the working group to adopt this document, and it becomes then a working group document if it is adopted. And then at that stage, you still normally have the same authors working on the document and owning the document in that stage, but it's actually an ownership that goes to the working group. So they could choose to put in, if the document wasn't really progressing, they could choose to say, no, we want to put somebody else in place to manage that document, to be the editor of that document. Doesn't happen very often. But the key point, as Benoit was emphasizing, is that the document is owned by the working group. So if you as an author think it should be done one way and you ask the working group, the working group says, no, we really think it should be done the other way, then you have to document the consensus of the working group. That's your role. Your role is to help shepherd the document through, but the document's meant to represent the consensus of the working group. So that cycle happens again over a few IETFs. You refine the document, you have issues that you track, however you do it in different ways, and you get to a point where you as the author who's pushing this document through gets the one that says, I think it's done. I think we've finished doing this. There's nothing more to be done. And that's when we get to the second part of the working group stage, which is a working group last call. So this is the formal step in the process where you're checking is, does the working group have consensus to publish this document? And normally you'll get some people that might say, no, I don't think you should publish it. I don't think it's the right thing to do. Or you might get comments like people saying, actually, I think you should publish this, but you need to make these comments or these changes. And so you'll get a load of feedback at that stage, and you might again update the documents based on that feedback a little bit. But it's like the last point of the working group. And then the working group chairs, after that process, which might take a couple of weeks, might take a bit longer if there's a lot of feedback, will will make a decision as to whether there's consensus to sort of effectively finish that document from a working group perspective. And if the working group thinks it's not finished, or the chairs think it hasn't got consensus, then it will work on the working group a bit longer to try and resolve those issues that haven't got consensus yet. And there'll be another working group last call. But eventually, normally you get to a point where it finishes and the working group chairs say, okay, it's done. The shepherds will do another review and a write-up, and then they'll hand it off to the IESG, which is normally the responsible area director for that working group. So shepherd write-up, submit to the ISG for publication, and at this stage often you'll also get directorate reviews. So as I mentioned very early on, IETF is split up into these different areas. People often focus on one or two areas that they're experts in and a few working groups within that area, but you want to get reviews across the whole of IETF. So we have these directorate reviews where it goes out to experts in other areas to review the document and give you comments based on that particular area.
We have a couple questions.
Oh, yes.
Debbie Sasser.
Hello.
Yes, when you were talking about consensus,
Mhm.
and yet most of the work is done through email, and you have like your draft, and you want to know if it's going to go into the working group, and they talk about getting consensus. How do they get consensus when it's usually on email and you can't hum?
That's a good question. So it's done by people basically posting, the working group chairs will ask who supports this document, and people will send emails back saying, yes, I support this document, I think this is good, or I think it has these issues and that's comments. And the working group chairs will evaluate all the feedback that comes on that consensus call and evaluate whether there's consensus there to publish it. So some of the feedback will be back, yes, this is okay, I think these things need to be changed. Some people might say, no, I don't think this should be published. And the working group chair's role is to try and gauge rough consensus. It's not like everyone agrees, but is the feeling in the room that's leaning towards this
And is it
direction.
a Zoom call or an email at that point?
Email. Still email.
Okay.
So even when you have these discussions in the meetings and they'll do like a show of hands or hum in the room, you'll always, or nearly always hear the chair saying, we need to confirm that on the list. It's the email list that actually confirms these decisions, but it's good from a chair's point of view. If you've seen the reading of the room, if everyone says, yes, we think this is done, hopefully if you put it on the email list, you get the same response.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
More?
Noel?
Hello,
Hello.
my name is Noel. I'm from UCSB. So I think part of my question was already answered from the previous one, but I would like to get more clarity about the timeline of all of these steps and how they relate like to the meeting in person, and how much of the work is actually done offline.
So in terms of the timeline, there's no fixed timeline here. So it basically takes as long as it takes. And some documents might take like 1 year is probably almost the minimum. Maybe you can do it a bit shorter than that. Maybe you can do it in 8 months probably, but mostly a year is about the shortest of these sorts of phases. Some documents take 5 years or longer. They can take a long time because there's a lot of issues to resolve, and there's not necessarily a great rush always to publish something quickly. Sometimes you want to publish the thing that's right and things like that. So it just depends, and it depends on how engaged the authors are in progressing the work, and it depends on how engaged the working group is to help progress it as well. So that's. And what's your second part of the question? Sorry.
How does the process relate to us meeting in person?
Yes, how to relate to the meeting. So it effectively ends up as being checkpoints to normally to publish new versions of the draft. It sort of acts as a forcing function so that everyone publishes an updated draft and they come and present to the working group to say, this is what's changed. So you you do a presentation on the working group documents and the other individual drafts and say, this is where the work's progressing to. And often you'll raise any issues you think are important to try and get feedback to help progress it. So the meetings help push the work along.
Okay, thank you.
You can probably add that working
Hi, Roberta
yes.
here. Roberta Robert. I have a question about how do you deal with, the documents being on the same subject sometimes in different groups, and is it only on the directorate reviews that you'll see and catch those kind of alignments, or how usually that kind of conflicts are solved?
That's an excellent question. So it's the working group chairs will talk to each other if they need to, and the area directors again. The area directors are meant to have an overview of what's happening within their working groups, and they discuss amongst themselves. So if there's a topic that spans more than one area, like maybe security and something else, then you'd hope that those two area directors would say, oh, by the way, there's these two documents that are very similar or come the same thing. And then the area directors and the working group chairs would work out where to bring the documents and probably focus on doing them in a single working group. If you then take that, often you get the case where you get multiple people presenting similar ideas to solve a particular problem. And that's very tricky because some people are wedded into like, this is the way that I want to do it, this is fixed. And so often you'll then there's different ways to solve that. But one of them is you get a design team together where you try and get people to try and work together, not on the mailing list, but somewhere a bit more private, where they can maybe leave their egos behind and try and work on consensus, because they know you've got to get to a point where you agree. You can't, sometimes you might publish both solutions, but ideally in the IETF, you want to try and get to one solution. That's what we're trying to do. But that is a tricky point. And that, again, in terms of the process and times, is sometimes why it takes longer. And one more thing I was going to say is another thing to mention back to the previous question is sometimes you'll organize virtual interim meetings as well on a particular topic, just to try and help those move along.
That was my following up question about the intermittent meetings. And this is also the case for the side meetings that we have around here?
No, side meetings are quite different. So side meetings, by and large, are nothing to do with the working groups. They're entirely separate. Anyone can arrange and organize those, and you shouldn't be doing working group work in a side meeting. It's okay to be bringing up like a new idea that might then go into the working group later, but they're entirely unofficial. So anything that is part of the working group consensus has to be done as part of that working group meeting.
Thank you.
So I think I covered working group last call and moved on to the ISG. So to cover this fairly quickly, the ISG has two phases, and the first one you see is more closely in terms of the area director will do a review of the documents, and they'll make a decision as to whether they're happy to publish that document. So at that stage, the area director might say, no, I'm not going to publish this. Hopefully, there have been some indications earlier on that they won't do that, and that's unusual. But they have that choice. They've got to ultimately decide that they want to put their name against that document and say, yes, I want to publish this. So the area director normally will do a review and give you some feedback and say, this is what I think needs to be changed. There's another review cycle. You update those comments and things, and then it's done from their point of view. And the area director says, I think I'm happy for this document to be published. I think this is done. And then they submit it to a second last call, but this time to the whole of the IETF. It's the IETF last call. So it's to check consensus across the whole IETF. And at that point, you have a 2-week last call, an IETF last call. Now, you don't normally get many reviews during that. Sometimes you do, it's very contentious, but mostly it's just directorate reviews from other areas that got some comments about your documents. So you go through, you update those fairly quickly, and fix the issues that come in and discuss them and things like that. And then eventually you get to the point where the area director says, okay, I can see from the feedback in the IETF review that the document has consensus to publish. And then you get to the sort of final phase that really matters, is that the whole of the IESG, so all 14 area directors, will then review and ballot on the document. And exactly how they ballot depends on the type of document, but they've got to, again, come to consensus that they're happy for it to be published. And you will get some more feedback at that stage as well. And we cover that a little bit later. And then finally, if there's issues there, the document might get sent back to the working group for more work. But normally you resolve those comments and it goes into an RFC editor queue, and it sits there, and the RFC editor goes through, and then just generally they work through the documents, make some editorial improvements, but not changing the protocol or the details of the document until they're finally done. And it gets published as an RFC. So just to sort of summarize, this is the flow. You got the individual phase, you have some rounds, and you update the document there. You ask for working group adoption. Hopefully, if there's interest for the working group to work on that, it gets adopted. Otherwise, it might get dropped. The working group might say, no, this isn't something we care about. You process the document in the working group and improve it. You resolve the issues. You get to a point where you get to working group last call and you check consensus. The working group chairs make a consensus check. And hopefully once it gets past that stage, you resolve the issues, and then the area director reviews it. There's an IETF last call. You resolve some more comments, you get director reviews, and then you get the IESG, does the final round of reviews and checks the document's happy. And if they are, then the document then gets into the queue to be published. So lots and lots of review cycles, lots of stages in this process to review it. And that's because we want the specifications to be really good. And so you want people to raise issues, raise concerns, discuss them, improve the documents, and get through. And I think I'm over to you.
All right, so a couple of points I want to mention on this slide. So there are, whenever we discuss the consensus, there are 3 points where it's done in the process. Call for adoption. Then there is workgroup last call, and there is the IETF last call. So you might be thinking it's a very long process, and somehow it's true. But I think this is also an efficient one. It would be so easy to say, this is the protocol spec, and we've got a single open source library that does it. And what's happening if there is a flow in this library? There's a flow for the entire internet. What we do as well, to come back on one of the questions from the ladies, and thank you ladies for asking question, gentlemen, hint. So about the delay, we also test interoperability. We like to get two independent implementations, right? So that's also why sometimes there's a delay. And the game about going back to Montreal, it was like a game. But if you think about, I would like to, the working group has to decide whether we take cryptographic algorithm 1 or 2 as a default for protocol. It's like serious stuff, right? But the same mechanism we use for the game is working as well here. All right. Different working groups work differently. Based on the questions, we could have like design team. This is the one at the bottom, where multiple people work on similar stuff. We say to them, go and work and come back with the conclusion to the working group. Some work with GitHub at the top, right? GitHub works perfectly well if you want to send quick edits, okay? It doesn't work too well for open issues. It could just for the open issue, but we would like to discuss it ideally on the mailing list. And what we have to do is validate the decision on the mailing list for sure. We discussed the next point, the interim meetings. We had in one of the working group I'm working with, an interim meeting on, do we want to work on knowledge graphs in the IETF? So it was a 2-hour topic on this 2 hours meeting on this specific topic, right? Different working group work differently. Some have 2 chairs, some have 3 chairs, some have a secretary who takes care of all the administration part. And if I say secretary, maybe it looks bad, but it's like a very good way to know how the sausage is made, as we say in English, to understand what's happening, all the requests coming to the chairs and all this. What you could be doing also, Rob mentioned this, the point number 4, is that whenever a working group, whenever a document is adopted, it might happen, by default we take the same author, but it might happen, whenever it's contentious, that the chair is going to say, you are the editor of that document and you take all the arguments from the different camps, for example. So different way of working. Here, what I like about this, it's for meetings and interim meetings, and everything is on this line. We had a question when I arrived in the room about how to get like the .ics into your calendar, right? So, but here you've got all the dots, sorry, all the links. It's the working group, it goes to the charter, It goes to the agenda. You could download the tar file, all the documents. You could join on the session directly. You've got the link to take minutes. That's something we do on the fly in the meeting. And I encourage you to also look at this link. You know, you would arrive to the microphone, and the first couple of times I arrived, I said, "Hello, my name is Benoit Claes," because I was just scared, right? Nobody got my name. And in meeting minutes, it said, question mark. You could just go there and put your name, and maybe if with my heavy French accent, nobody understand me, I could just say in the minutes and express what I was telling, right? It's also a great way, if you follow the meeting minutes directly that are taken on the fly, to look up the names of the people. Oh, he's a draft author, or he's like, I don't know, the secretary, etc. So this link is a great resource. This one, oh yeah.
So I've described the process to you through the working group, and then the final phase of this is when it gets to the IESG. So a little bit more about the IESG. So they're married up with the area directors. They form the IESG as a body, and you've got to remember that these people, they're representing the community. They're selected by the community to try and help progress the work. So they're there to try and make sure that what we publish is good and is a high standard. Now, at the end of that process, or towards the end of the process, I said that the documents get sent to the IESG for review, and they actually get to ballot on the documents. There's a meeting that they hold every 2 weeks called a telechat meeting, and it's open. You can go and join that meeting. They publish the details of what's on there, and you can see what documents are going to be discussed on there. You're not allowed to speak in the meeting unless invited to do so, because otherwise it would slow down the meeting. But you can listen in on what's being discussed, and they effectively they'll discuss the different documents. Now, when the documents have got to that telechat review, each of the area directors will have reviewed that document to some level. They might not have read the whole thing. They may have skimmed over bits of it, depending, because there's a lot of documents to review. And they'll have balloted on the document. They've decided whether the document should progress or not. And there's two sorts of ballots. And the key is one is you get these sort of discusses, and you get the other one is comments. And comments are just like any other feedback on the document. It's like, I think you could improve the document by doing this, or this bit was unclear to me, but I'm not going to worry about it too much, but you might want to improve it. And it's up to the authors really whether they act on those comments. It's like anyone else giving a comment. The area directors can also ballot a discuss. And a discuss says, I think that there's either something that I'm worried about and I need to discuss it with the authors before I allow this document to be published, or there's something that I have a concern with how it's written in the document that means either this needs to change before I'm willing to publish the document. But it's not, if you get to this stage where you get discusses, don't treat them like the area directors are trying to stop my work from being published. Treat it as that some different independent eyes who are experts in their areas and reviewing documents have found concerns, and they're trying to help make sure that those concerns are addressed before it gets published. So don't fear if you get discusses on documents. Most documents will end up with one or two, and they're normally relatively easy to resolve, some of them. So don't fear them, but again, you do have to act on them and resolve them before the document can progress any further. The IESG members, both Benoit and I were area directors, and we're both very approachable, and all the area directors are. You can go and talk to them, but during this week they'll be very busy managing the meetings. They've got meetings all of today. So they're very busy people. They do have these IESG office hours for each of the different areas, or most of them do, and that's posted in the agenda. So if you've got an issue you want to discuss with an area director, go to that particular slot. Maybe drop them an email in advance about what you want to discuss. That would also be good. And then you go and chat to them, and they'll have half an hour time to discuss issues with particular people, or they'll find another time to talk to you or something similar. So drop them an email if you need to, but they are busy this week. Hopefully lots of them will be in the new participant quick connections later on today. I strongly recommend going to that and trying to find people to chat to, because again, making the connections, if you've got new work you're bringing to the IETF, they can help direct you and send it in the right direction. RFCs, oh sorry, the question, yes, from Veneshi. I think the ladies are still winning on the asking questions.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
My question is, when an individual has an idea, are we expected to carry the whole idea to execution all by ourselves, or can we request a specialized expertise in some parts that we don't have enough experience about from IETF?
That's an excellent question. So definitely on the first one is no, you're not obliged to carry it on your own. So the IETF is great to find. Normally when you do your individual draft, you'll submit it and people review it, and there will be other people who have interest in that idea and want to help progress it. So they'll say, could I work on this document with you together? And they'll co-author it. So, and ideally, if you've in the area where we work, where you've got different companies also trying to produce some ideas and different operators, it's helpful to get people who are going to consume a protocol for the network management, as well as the other vendors, to all agree, like, yes, we want to work on this thing, and you get them as authors. You work together as a group for the document. But even putting that aside, the other people, like the working group chairs, and I mentioned one of the slides mentioned document shepherd and the area directors, they'll all help your work progress. So the working group chairs will say, they'll say, like, I think you should get a review from the security directorate because it looks like you've got security concerns. And they'll ask that very early on to try and help, or they'll say, they'll ask you to reach out to different working group chairs, or they'll do it on your behalf. So it's definitely the case that most people in IETF will try and help the work to progress, and they'll find ways to help people who are inexperienced.
Yeah, sounds amazing. And thank you, Benoit and Rob.
So, thank you. So one thing I find very confusing with RFCs, and I wish that they would make this a bit simpler, but it's sort of hard, it's sort of historical, is there's different forms of RFCs, and they all look very similar, and sometimes it's hard to see what the difference is. So the first one is that what the IETF part of the organization produces, the RFCs, IETF are IETF standard track, and they come into two different stages for the standards track. You either have proposed standard or internet standard. Now, all the documents initially come through as proposed standard, and then a few of them over time get elevated to internet standard, but it's very, very few. And that's not because most documents aren't of that level, it's because people don't really need to do that. Normally, in my opinion, by the time things have been well deployed and you know that what they're doing is, by that stage, elevating to internet standard classification doesn't help too much. But we have these two things, so most of those coming through the IETF are proposed standard, and you can treat those as a standard that IETF thinks ready to deploy. It's not like this is just in process. It's actually normally that stage you think is ready. We also have informational documents. So these are documents that might be published by the IETF as well, that aren't necessarily a protocol standard, but they're useful information that needs to be published alongside. So it might be some operational considerations or deployment considerations on how to do something. It might be, I've got an idea here that's interesting, or proprietary protocol you want to document that's the IETF's not producing, but it'd still be useful to document that as part of the RFC stream. So you get these informational documents, but they still have the same consensus requirements as other documents. Yes, Sam. How are we doing for time? Do we need to speed up a bit? We do.
We have about 12 minutes.
Okay.
Hi, Sam Sargent.
Hi.
Interested in the progression from proposed standard to internet standard. If it needs to be widely deployed, how long might that take, and who pushes that process forward?
The person who pushes it forward normally would be the person who authored the document if they wanted it to be done. How widely deployed? I don't think there's any set rule. I can't remember the exact guidance. Effectively, it's reasonably widely deployed and there's no known issues. And sometimes if you go from proposed standard to internet standard, there might be some extensions that were written into the original draft, an optional functionality that just hasn't been used, hasn't been deployed, and you take that out. There might be some errata against the original document that you would then merge in and resolve. So you're trying to make it sort of really super bulletproof at that stage. So IPv6 specification, for example, has reached internet standard. The CWAR specification for doing like a binary encoding, again, that was pushed to be internet standard, but relatively quickly. But I think there's more because the author wanted it to be at that stage than any useful things. None of my work I try and push into internet standard. It's not necessary. All the operators and people will deploy happily on proposed standard. In fact, I think they should fix the name. Anyway. Thank you. So we've got informational documents, two more. We've got BCP's best current practice, and these fall into two categories. One of the categories is like the IETF process documents fall into BCPs, and it's like, this is how the IETF process works. And then the other one that BCPs are is like normally operational guidance. This is how you should, this is how the IETF recommends you deploy TLS. You should use at least TLS version 1.2 or use TLS version 1.3 if you can. And that becomes a BCP, best current practice. This is the collective industry's recommendation on what you should do at the current time. And that will update and evolve over time. And then the last one we have is experimental documents. And those are ones, you don't see many of those. Those are experiments that normally meant to be time bounded for like 2 years or 3 years. You've got an idea, you're not quite sure whether or not this is a good thing to do or not. Obviously, you can't break the internet. And it's like, I want to try this out and see, but I want to have a specification so multiple people can do it. So you do an experimental standard, you publish it, people deploy it or if they want to and try it, and then you come back after 2 or 3 years. You might fix things and improve things, or you might decide to drop it. But it's definitely saying, look, this is an unstable protocol. We might change this in ways that could significantly change.
Thank you. The last section is bringing new work, because if you come to the session, it's because you want to bring new work to IETF. Great. So the first thing is this something that the IETF should be working on? That's the first question that you want to ask yourself. If you come here and try to get a specification from transmission hardware, maybe it's not the right place. The thing that you want to ask yourself is, who's going to use the work? Something which is a fact is that you will not succeed alone in the IETF. You need to bring people with you. You need to have the 2-minute elevator pitch on your problem statement. You want to bring people with you, and as a consequence, you will have different reviews. And the third point is that, is this an engineering problem or research problem? I believe that you learn the difference between the IETF and the IRTF, where R stands for research. It might be more sometimes a research problem. Let's take AI. Is this something like a spec that you want to have in the IETF right now, or it's more like research? So there's also a distinction where you want to work in the IETF or the IRTF. The best thing is to ask for feedback, as we mentioned already. Now, there is no shortcut for doing the work. I present, like many of us, a lot on PowerPoint, but these are bullet points. There is some real value to write an IETF draft, to just put in wording, in sentences, not bullet points, what you want to express. Is going to go a long way. The experience I've been having is that the IETF is great because we've got individuals coming from all horizons. It means also that whenever you specifically use terms, this term might mean something in networking. It might mean something slightly differently if you are a hardware guy, or if you are, a security expert or whoever. So just writing in sentences with terminology helps a lot. Second point, the IPR, intellectual property rights. Nothing prevents you to have a patent on one of the technology you're presenting. However, it's compulsory for you to disclose it. In the first consensus call, which is like call for adoption, you will see, do you have IPR on this draft? Or are you aware of an IPR, even if it's not you, and you should disclose it? What is a bad practice is that we arrive and get almost an RFC and someone says, oh, by the way, I've got a patent on this. We don't like it too much. The IETF, however, is not in the business to check if the patent is valid for the specification. It's not our job. We don't want to do it. Remember, at each step, call for adoption, plus call, you will be asked for IPRs. And it's your duty to declare it. your own or the one from the other. The last point is that you have an idea, right? You want to write the draft and you want to know what you're aiming for. Sometimes as chair, we have presentation, it's interesting, and we ask, what do you want to get? Do you want to publish a document? And people say, I don't know yet. So sometimes the outcome is not always to publish a document. It's to help with code, it's to help with reviews. So know what you would like to have as an ultimate goal. All right. So choose your path for the work. If you don't know where to go, go to the area of dispatch. And there was a question in the chat in the very first, one of the first slides with all the working groups, and there was like some in bold. And Rob mentioned that there are the kind of dispatch for a specific area. Security dispatch, dispatch for general. And the question in the chat was that, are those temporary groups, working groups? The answer is no. They are there for some time. However, Rob mentioned also it could be evolving. Second point, forming a community of interested participants. I mentioned you will not succeed alone. For example, when I was younger, I put a draft with all aspects of the solution, and I thought it was the best one, and I tried to push it, and people pushed back on it. The mistake I did is not to bring the people from different horizons with me, not to have a community telling, yes, we should be solving this problem statement. So have discussion with many people from the working group you care about, in the hackathon table, wherever, to see if there is interest. And whenever you come with like multiple people coming to the working group telling, I would like to work on this. This is a valid problem statement. It's got more weight. What could be doing if it's a brand new idea? There is like the bird of a feather, which is a pathway to create working group. With the supervision of the area director, we could have a buff. And above, there is like 4 questions we want to ask. First one, is this a problem? Is the problem statement clear? First one, just stating the problem statement sometimes is difficult. Second one, is the IETF the right place to work on this? Third question, is there enough interest from the community to work on this? And the 4 is like, is there a good chance of success? And these are the 4 questions we're going to ask. And the area director and the ISG are going to evaluate this, and they could potentially create a new working group. So I think this is the last slide, and it's a kind of summary of everything we said. Write your draft. It takes time, but it's something valuable. Prepare a short presentation. Have the 2 minutes elevator pitch to speak to people and the welcome reception wherever. Socialize your idea. You could also present it. There is something called the hot RFC. We get a few minutes to present an idea. And be aware that working groups are actually busy. So as workgroup chair, we give priority for airtime to workgroup documents, then individual documents, but which one? The one that were discussed on the mailing list, right? So if you just arrive with a draft that nobody knows and you say, I would like to have half an hour to present it, it's not going to work that way, right? And I think this is it. Oh, the last one. Everyone is a volunteer here. Nobody is obliged to read your draft. Now, it means also a message is that if you care about your draft, and you care about your draft, and you care about your draft, it means that if we're all selfish, well, no work is done. So it means that sometimes it's good like, all right, I like it with your draft. Let me review it, comment it, give feedback, and vice versa. Could you tell me what's wrong with my draft, right? And I see there is like Lucy.
Thank you both for the very good introduction. My question is regarding, do you mind going back to a slide? So when you're saying write up your ideas and internet draft, does it have to be in a submitted ID, or it can be just a kind of idea written in the format of ID and then share with the community?
Sorry, can you rephrase the question?
The question
it has to be
is-
submitted? So what?
Yeah, because my understanding is there's a tooling IETF provides for drafting the internet draft. So when you say here we can provide write up an ID, does it have to be submitted to in order for the community to
Yes.
discuss? Okay.
It has to be submitted. And also something that is important is that we close the window for submission 2 weeks before the IETF meeting so that people could come and prepare and read the draft if they're presented in the meeting. So yes, it has to be submitted. Want to add something?
So I just want to add, so yes, it has to be submitted, but the draft doesn't have to be complete. So it's entirely normal if you have an idea, just to write the idea down in the draft, and this is the problem I'm trying to solve, but leave the entire sections blank, it's like TBD and things. That's perfectly fine. But as long as you have a document that people can comment on and review, then you're fine.
My understanding is when we are submitting the draft, the ID, and we need to choose whether we're submitting to a working group or so what. If at that point we're not sure which working group is the right one to submit, where there are multiple candidates, what is the best way to approach it?
Okay, good question. Whenever you submit a draft, we don't ask you to which working group you want to submit it.
Oh.
However, remember the trick that I mentioned. If you know the working group, you could put the acronym in the draft name is going to end up in the list with this working group. If you don't know, this is fine, right? You don't have to put an acronym. And then you could say, I'm not sure if it goes to working group 1, 2, or 3. The key thing is to pose the draft and you discuss with the people. And so what I've seen is that there is sometimes a chance to put in multiple working groups, and the chairs are going to say, with your idea, I believe the better audience would be that working group. Then 2 choices. Either you rename your working group, rename your draft, or you don't. It doesn't matter at that point in time.
Okay, thank you very much.
Jeff Brown, I had 2 quick questions about running code. So the first is, how strict is the requirement to have 2 implementations for the RFC process?
Okay, so it's not a strict requirements. Okay. However, it helps a lot. So we discussed about the timeline in a question before. So whenever you have a working group document with 2 implementations and you came to the hackathon, you can demonstrate it. Then as a chair, you're thinking, okay, it seems to be kind of ready to progress, as opposed to a document doesn't have like a working group, doesn't have implementation. So it's not a specific requirement, but it helps a lot to speed up the process. Make sense?
That does make sense, yeah. And my second question is just, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to add to that. And the other benefit is if I'm writing a protocol and I'm writing the implementation, then I've written the documents, I might miss things out because I've just assumed that they would do it. It'd be written that way, or assumptions or something similar. Whereas if someone else has read that document and implemented it independently, then that's a really good way of finding gaps and things are missing or bits that are unclear in the document.
Yeah, I've heard that it's really helpful for the review process of the RFC itself to actually implement it, and then they can review it that way.
And one more thing, if you have implementation, there is like a small section that you could call implementation status. And it comes from an experimental RFC. We were trying to say, can we have this section, which, by the way, will not be published in the RFC, but it helps a lot that if Jeff comes with a draft and I see 3 implementations from 3 completely independent vendors, then there is some community behind it. Right. There is some more weight.
And my second question, I think, relates to that. So that there's all of this running code that's out there, but so far it's been difficult for me to find. Is there a plan to have links to that running code in data tracker, related to the RFC itself?
So we discussed that already in the ISG some years ago. Mm-hmm. Now, the IETF is a kind of self-organizing community. So we don't have a process to do so. However, if you go to a data tracker, you could be finding additional links there. So if the author wants to do it, they could. So where's this? Here. Okay, that's an old slide. Oh, no, additional resources there. So typically what we put in there, this is the GitHub for open issues or code or whatever you want. But there is not like an IETF process to force people to say that we should have code. What we discussed in the past, it would be very ideal. Like for universities, right? They want to just look at the code or add their code, etc. But it's not in place.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'm actually closing the queue right now. We just have one more question. Syed? Go ahead, Syed.
Hello, I'm Puria. I want to ask, are those dispatch working group are permanent or temporary too? Like the
Permanent.
other working groups in that area? Thank you.
Welcome.
All right. Thank you, Benoit and Rob. We realized that was a very intense as far as information goes for this session, but it's an extremely important one. And the questions you guys asked are important in understanding the process. We don't have a lot of time for a break right now, but I'm going to do a quick changeover for slides. And we have a very short session right after this, just doing an introduction to the hackathon. We have Charles here, who's one of the hackathon chairs, and we're just going to talk briefly about it. We do have lunch being set up in the back of the room. And so as soon as we're done with that session, you'll have a nice break to eat lunch, take a break, close your eyes. And so yeah, we're just going to set up the slides real quick and get going on this fourth session, and then we'll have a lunch break. So we'll start in just a couple minutes. Sorry, we went over, but those were really good questions.
Yeah. The first two slides, or at least the first slide, covered it.
Slide answer is working.
Something like the very end. At the very end. When they're doing yeah, so once they've done the editing and they check the spelling and they send it back to the like there's a final pass where they have the authors, you see how the changes. Only one it's a very good you know which yeah, I don't know, and I don't know if they will do something special for that, because I guess technically you could reserve a number. I know sometimes they have one or two they want then order for that. I'll try to do it. Yeah, I got lost. You want to get 10,000. A lot of drafts. Grab that time. It'll be interesting.
All right, Charles. Yep, I'm gonna. Okay, we're going to get started here in just a little bit, 30 seconds or so. That's you. And as I mentioned, right after this session, we have lunch available in the back of the room. Feel free to grab a plate and hang out in here, or you can take your plate outside. There's plenty of seating. But I'd like to introduce Charles, who's one of the hackathon chairs, and he's going to just do a quick introduction to the hackathon. And as Braun had said earlier, we'd love to see you at the hackathon next time. So without further ado, here's Charles.
Okay, great. Thanks for that intro, and happy to be able to share with all of you a bit about the hackathon. Actually, the questions that came up about running code, that's what the hackathon's all about, and even the implementation status and that. So we'll have a quick review of some of that information. First of all, you met me, but I have two other co-chairs that help with the hackathon, Barry and Benno. If you haven't met them, they'll be in the hackathon room, and you'll see them. The three of us work together quite well to put on the hackathons, I believe. I won't go through our bios. The note well, you guys have already seen that, right? Okay, I'm not going to cover that. Running code. So we talked about the importance of that. We talked about implementations and how that requirement to have two independent implementations has been relaxed, but it's still, super helpful to have that. We also talked about the implementation status. I think that was just mentioned. And that's a very handy way to just, to list any implementations you have. But as was mentioned by Benoit, that actually goes away when the draft becomes an RFC. So that additional information field that they showed is actually a really good way to put a link either directly to your code, or what I've seen others do, if in case there's a lot of code, they put it to perhaps a page that lists all the code that is there, and you can update that independently of versions of the draft. And in terms of the process, there is no specific process as you saw, but actually do have an expired draft called Finding Code, because it's meant to as a proposal as to how we might make that more formal. So we'll see. I've presented that a couple times, and some people use it, but it's not a standard part of the standard, for lack of a better word, of the IETF process. So the hackathon, as we mentioned, it is really meant to put more emphasis on running code. We heard about all the reasons why having implementations is great and very helpful. So this just is a place where you're able to go and completely focus on that. The idea is we want to advance the pace and relevance of the work that IETF is doing to make it quicker from the time you have a great idea and get some people working on it with you to the time that it's actually deployed on the internet. So the code is helpful during the definition of the standard, but even after the definition, because if you think about it, when someone has a draft or an RFC and they need to implement it, that can be a bit daunting. But if they actually have some running code that partially or fully implements that draft or that RFC, or that is a tool that can help them, say, sniff traffic on the network for examples of packets related to the standard that you're putting out, that's really helpful and helps with deployment. Also, another goal is to bring, I'd say, like a different audience and new people into the IETF. A lot of developers, I think, don't typically think of themselves as being standards people who would come to an IETF meeting. We want to change that perception, and this is helping with that, because I think it's a real great place where developers can come and really contribute meaningfully by helping implement some of the drafts and finding problems in them and providing just super feedback. So this hackathon, you may have seen other ones, but this one is definitely a collaborative event. It's really about coming together to work on IETF technologies. You'll see people kind of will jump around from one project to another, lending a hand with, you know, whatever their skill set or passion is. So it's not competitive at all, although people do try to get a lot done in a short amount of time, but it's not competitive. There's no prizes or anything like that. It's completely free. So we encourage you to stick around and participate in the IETF meeting week. But if you want to just come from the hackathon, that's perfectly possible, right? Because it is free. We have a lot of people show up, typically like 300 or more. We have on the range of 40 to 50 projects. And those are just anyone can start a project, and they really span the complete set of technologies that IETF is working on. At the end of the hackathon, we have a quick presentation, quick presentations of results of the projects. And these are just really short, like 2 to 3 minutes to tell people what you tried to do, what you actually accomplished, and very importantly, what you're going to feed back into the working group or into the standards process. And but then the next day, tomorrow, we have Hack Demo Happy Hour. And that's a time when you people who participate in the hackathon are actually encouraged to demo their project and have more in-depth discussions with anyone within the IETF community who might be interested. And if you know you're not going to be able to see the presentations that happened today, but they'll all be recorded like all the IETF sessions, and you can go back and check that out. Oh, and I think I did mention that anyone can start a project. And if you want to start a project, you can champion that project. As long as we have, if you're willing to help others, you know, come and work with you, you're welcome to do that and bring your project to the hackathon. The way we do that is we list all the projects on the wiki, and this is just a snapshot of you know, what was on the wiki. And anyone with a data tracker account can edit this. You can add your project to it. You can put information there, links to your draft, links to code, links to whatever information would be useful to someone who might want to better understand what you're doing and how they can come and join you. So, you know, that's a great resource. You can even go now and you can look at the set of projects that people are working on at this year's hackathon. And with that, I think that's it for my slides. But are there any questions? Oh, we're heading over.
And yeah, Barry just joined. So what we're going to do here is do kind of a live check-in at the hackathon. This is Barry Leba, who is also one of the chairs of the hackathon. Barry, can you test out your audio?
Yeah, can you hear me?
We can hear you loud and clear. So Barry's going to do just a quick look into what the hackathon actually looks like.
Okay, now I don't think I can flip my camera, so I'll have to do it this way, but here's the room. And you can see we have a bunch of tables and signs on the tables with what projects they are. We have a little whiteboard here with the map of the room and where people can find the projects they're looking for. And we're just getting ready for lunch setup. So it's a little scattered, but I'm gonna walk around a bit and show you what's happening. And there's a table I wanna try to talk to, the Media Over Quick group. So here's that and here's them. And you guys want to talk a little bit about what you guys are working on?
Yeah. It's kind of my first IETF here. Maybe
Okay. Here, let's see if Ali wants to say something. So can you tell the new participants what the Media Over Quick group is working on and what you're accomplishing at the hackathon?
So yes, first of all, it's no longer Media Over Quick. It's just mock. So it's supposed to be a generic distribution protocol, and we are doing a bunch of different implementations and trying to make it work among each other, right? So some of us are working on for media ingest, some of us are working on media distribution, but eventually this will be, as I said, it will be a generic distribution mechanism for any kind of media, large scale, highly scalable, like one-to-many, many-to-many type of application. So I think it's going to be really cool.
What do you hope to accomplish this weekend?
this weekend.
Yeah.
We just showed a couple of demos, and then currently we are testing with other implementations. Our relay is talking to other subscribers and vice versa, and trying to fix errors.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thanks, guys.
Sure.
So yeah, the point here is they're working on doing early testing of the protocols that the working group in the IETF is working on, and validating the protocols, validating the proposals that are being written. So there we go. Is there anything else you want me to do?
I think we're good, Barry. Thank you very much for just giving us a little look into the hackathon. So hopefully you'll see some new participants in the next hackathon.
Okay, great. Bye.
Well, just one thing that I think I didn't touch on, I focus very much on developers and coding, and the other really important thing is having a mix of people who maybe aren't developers, but are actively contributing to or working on the draft. Having different subject matter experts from the IETF and developers who maybe are also contributing to the draft, or maybe they're just implementing it, but having that mix of people is really good. And so that's one of the really super valuable things that we bring together with the hackathon is oftentimes those two committees, or even within a company, the people who might be working on specifying the standards and those who are implementing it may be in different groups, or here we bring them in the same room, and by having them work together over the course of a weekend, not only do they get a lot done, but they get to know each other. They build just those personal relationships and networking. So that's super valuable as well.
All right, we have a question in the queue. Brian? Oh, Brian, we can't hear you.
Not yet. We don't hear you yet.
While Brian is finding his audio, I do want to mention too the wiki where all those projects are listed. Some of them are identified as good projects for new participants to participate in. The champion of a project will kind of let you know that, hey, this is a great one to join as a new participant that you can get involved in. So that's definitely something to pay attention to at the next or future hackathons.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you, Brian.
Okay. Is there any facilitation for remote participation in the hackathon?
Yeah, definitely. Like everything in the IETF, we want to make sure we support remote participation as much as we can. And so we have a few things. One, there's this, I don't know if they talked about the Gather tool, but that's kind of an interactive virtual space where people who are physically in the room can sit down at virtual tables with people who aren't in the room. And we can do that. And they actually join into a kind of a video conference, whoever's at the table. And you can also share whiteboards and that. So that's there to facilitate that. We also have a team schedule that we post where the champions of the project can say, okay, these are specific times when we're going to make sure we're on this this Zoom conference or this WebEx or whatever. And here's the way that we're going to, the messaging app that we're going to use to communicate on our project. So that way we facilitate the communication across the two. It's even possible to have teams work that are completely remote. So any mix of remote and in the room is good.
Okay. Thank you, Charles. And thank you, Barry Online. We are ready for a well-deserved break. That was a lot of information. Thank you for hanging in there with us. We do have lunch set up in the back of the room. Please help yourself. I believe everything is labeled if you have any nutrition concerns. I'm going to be up here. If you have any questions and want to come up or just say hello, please do so. And then we're going to get started right at 2 o'clock. We have a couple more sessions for you with fabulous information. So we'll see you back then. And yeah, enjoy your break. Thank you.
So, is that third time? It seems like your session's going pretty well too.